Welcome to the third and last day of this workshop. We will be ending by 1 o'clock in the morning, but these last 200 days have been so remarkably fresh, especially the way we interacted. A most remarkable, most memorable, most refreshing, most fulfilling experience we ever had. One of the finest, I must say, one of the finest people, one of the most touching people, one of the most fulfilling workshops we ever had in our life. Thank you so much. We go back so fresh, so fulfilled, thankful for everything. And the way I returned, the way I participated, is very clear that somehow we have been reaching each other. Am I clear? Do I make some sense? Anything you want to speak, anything you want to say, you are most welcome. Anything you want to add, because we are all teachers. Your experience, your understanding, your insights are most essential. One word which I want to speak to you, which is most essential, is insight. Now, what is insight? For a teacher, for a parent, for an individual, this one word, if you ask me, is most essential. Insight. Now, what is insight?
Deep understanding.
Deep understanding. What you have written, every single word indicates that you have some insight. It can be deep, it has to be deep. But apart from that, when you will have the right insight? Insight means what? The real meaning. But there's a problem. How do I know what is real? It may look real, but it's not real. There's a problem. Because things sometimes can be so complicated, layer after layer, layer after layer, layer after layer, and I'm not able to see the core. I'm not able to see the core. And more we see.
If you remove the prejudices and then think, I think that would be the answer.
That means the most basic function of a teacher, when insight is possible.
If teacher removes the prejudices.
How do you do that? How do you do that?
By self-learning.
You are touched a very, you said a very, it's the ultimate thing. As a teacher, as an individual, as a friend, you must help me to remove my prejudices. How to do that? What a remarkable thing you have said. The most basic function of any teacher is that. But how you do that? What is the prejudice? Shall we explore this in a very explicit thing? Where is the prejudice? No, we will just go.
Actually, prejudices are on both sides. On the student side.
No, you are very clear. You are very clear. You have no prejudice.
Yeah.
Am I clear?
Yeah.
You have no prejudice. You see very clearly. But your problem is you want make me to see.
Okay.
Without any prejudice. How you do that?
By maybe one way, by trying to counsel that you are your aim is this. For example, you have to reach there, right?
I have reached there.
Yeah.
You have been there.
Yeah.
You have seen what is there, and you want me to see that.
Yeah. So, see there. So therefore, your approach is not correct. Approach means your thought process is not correct.
Okay.
You have the potential.
I have the potential. Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. You see my potential. You see I am capable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are not utilizing your potential.
Yes.
Therefore, what you should do, you should do these things.
What things?
Maybe you try to just reinvent yourself by looking into your thought process. Maybe there is something is lacking there.
But how do you help me?
I think the best way is to just. It is not a one day game. It is not a one day game that you say all will be done. No? So it's a long process. It's a long process to change one's prejudices.
Okay.
Right? So therefore maybe you have to keep a constant watch.
Constant watch, very close watch.
Constant watch means you have the one semester of 6 months.
Okay.
Okay. So suppose you in the beginning of the classes you notice that this particular guy or this particular student is very.
He has the potential.
He has a potential, but he's not utilizing his potential.
Excellent.
Right. So therefore, starting you have counseled him in between and then in the last. And thereby, I think if you have made little bit of change, I think not in 6 months you can't change everything. If you have made little bit of change, I think you have done your work.
Great. To great extent. But
isn't it evaluation?
no, not that way. Not that way. He has seen. He is very clear. He is very clear, and he wants to remove my evaluation. He wants to help me to come out of my evaluation, my prejudice. That's what he's saying. He is very clear. He has no evaluation. He is not evaluating. He is my friend. He is my well-wisher. He is my supporter. He very clearly sees I have the potential. He very clearly sees that I have the potential. But he also sees that the potential has been masked by certain prejudices. Am I right? Am I right? What is prejudice?
Preconceived notion.
Where is it?
In the mind.
Whose mind? My mind. I am a student. It's my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. How you make me see my mind? No, how you make me see my prejudice? Are you following me? This is the most difficult thing. I may have a prejudice, I may have a bias, I may have a thought, I may have it. That is what is most essential. What is this prejudice? How this prejudice is formed? For example, I don't like your subject, I don't like this person, I don't like this, something I don't like. That's my prejudice. Okay. How this prejudice is formed? How this image is formed? What do you call this process? A very basic, very essential, you must be able to answer that. How this prejudice, how this jaundice, how this is formed, which is preventing my insight. Are you following me? Which is preventing the insight. The previous experience, That means what? What happens when you go to a previous experience? We have to go through an experience, you can't avoid it. Because life is a series of experiences. But when you go through an experience, that experience conditioning. Prejudice, bias, my thought process, my perception, the way I respond, my attitude is nothing but conditioning. Are you following me? Conditioning is what? Because education is this. So that how you can help me is, you make me see my conditioning. My parents, my culture, my caste, my traditions, book I read, the films I see, the songs I sing. Every single thing is conditioning. Am I right? That's why I become old. Old means I'm always conditioned. Fresh, becoming fresh means my ability to look at the world without any conditioning. Are you following me? That means I must die to the old. The death is beautiful. If something new has to come, old must die. If Buddha has to come, who must die? Because ultimately you have to make me Buddha. Buddha himself, a man who is able to see with clarity, with insight. Very simple, without any conditioning. Am I clear? Is this clear to you? You very clearly see when a student comes to my class, he is conditioned. And you have no role to play in this. You are not responsible. Alright? But I very clearly see your condition. But how I make you see that conditioning can be so harmful, which is preventing your joy, which is preventing your potential. Are you following me? Yeah, please.
You can have positive experiences associated with the nutrition. You can even learn positive responses to things.
We'll see, we'll explore about it. What Madam is saying, it's not essentially always negative. A condition has a very positive experience, which will add spice, color, joy to your life. That's what she is.
Use conditioning to make the child relearn, unlearn and relearn.
But first, that has to happen, I have to read.
Unlearn and relearn.
What she's saying is, if you want to, that means what she's saying is the teacher's role is to recondition it. Alright? Because she has seen something here and she wants to erase the previous things that she wanted to. But if what she's saying is something new has to come, I'll explore. The world must end. Alright? Without erasing the world, you cannot create.
Yes, unlearning has to.
Unlearning has to happen. That means if Buddha has to come, who must die? Who is the old? The prince Siddhartha must die. Am I right? And that's the problem. How will you make me die? No, I mean, you see that you must support me in such a way that I am willing to die. Not easy. And ultimate conditioning is my ego. Am I right? All problems, all difficulties, and I must have that strong ego. And without destroying the ego, and not destroying that without that way, I must be able to die to my ego, so that I can born fresh. Every single day I am born fresh. No, this is the problem.
So I read somewhere, ego means edging God out.
Excellent, very good. Now this is the problem. That's why I am speaking about these two forces. One is truth, a very powerful force, and other is love. But unfortunately, we don't know how to use these two powerful forces, which can create more damage. Condition has to be resolved only by help of making it see the truth. Other very most powerful forces. Now, these two things are very powerful forces, but the whole education is based on these two forces. If you ask me the most basic function of a teacher is to make me see the truth. How do you do that? Because in that process, you may create more distance. I'm clear. Yeah, please.
If we can make a child realize that the teacher is accepting his unconditionally, then the child may feel a sense of that is related to the teacher, is trusting the teacher, he is safe to the teacher, and then slowly through empowering the child, not making him see the truth, empower him to see the truth.
Yeah, that is correct, perfect. But for that, trust is required.
Trust is required, safe environment.
Why teacher? A parent can do that. But unfortunately, parents also don't have that unconditional this thing. That's the problem.
They have their own expectations.
Because they are scared. Basically, they are scared. They have so many fears. They want to protect the child to such an extent that in that process they destroy the child. That's the problem. Are you following me? Because they are the most basic reason for conditioning. I'm not blaming them, but they are helpless because they are also deeply conditioned. Are you following me? Yeah, please.
So for a particular semester, because we are dealing with a student,
Correct.
and we are talking in terms of a student.
Yes.
So if we are going to condition and then results definitely maybe after 4 months, 5 months, 6 months.
You never know when you catch them.
Exactly.
The spark, the flame, anytime. It's like putting seeds.
So what are the probable chances that it will
You never know. You can only pray.
initial?
You can only pray. But what's important is you must try to put those seeds. Okay. Some seeds, I'm not joking. Some of the things what you heard, what you have listened, those seeds will be always there. You never know when they are going to sprout. That risk you have to take, that trust you have to take. My job is very simple. As much as possible, in my transparency, in my honesty, in my goodness, I will try to give whatever I have to give, I will give. Justice is not assured, this is a problem, you see. You can't take anything for granted. But what you can do as a compassionate teacher is, whatever I know, whatever I feel good, whatever I see, the truth, that love can be, in your own way, creative way, you put those seeds in their heart, in their mind, in their soul, so that one day you hope that they will sprout.
Sir, by seeing the past experience,
Pardon, sir?
by seeing the past experience
Yes,
regarding some his properties,
yes.
he can analyze, self-analyze, or analyze by somebody else, and take the advantage and drawback of this. He
Yes.
can
Basically, we must train them how to think.
how to think, give the space to the mind
With the
by
space.
analyze
You
this.
see, I'm so glad that somebody has mentioned, I don't know, he has mentioned that free space is. Yeah, the space is only possible when you are able to remove the conditioning.
Condition.
Because when the mind is conditioned, mind has no space to receive anything new. Are you following? The space is ultimate. And space is ultimate. And when you have that space, anything is possible. But basic problem is how do you get that space? Mind has no space. So I'm not finding fault with students. Please look at yourself. We will begin from here. Do you have space? Do you have space?
Again, we come to the friendly environment. Last is the friendly environment.
First of all, that's the problem. If you have to create, if you have to make your students see, first you ask yourself, frankly, honestly, don't feel bad. Do I have that space? Because when you have that space can be so dense, can be so deep, can be so soft, unfathomable. You see, unlimited space, because in that space, everybody is included. Do you have that kind of space? Not only your student, your son, your daughter, your neighbor, your neighbor's wife, the tree, the plant, the bird, everybody is included in that space. Unlimited space, whole universe, the galaxies, the stars, the moons, suns. You don't leave anybody out of that space. And that's the ultimate space. And Buddha has that space. He will not reject anything. He will not reject anybody. Even the Hitler, even the Stalin, everybody is included in that space. Are you following? That space is most essential. And that space can become so thick, can become so deep. Sometimes you get scared by that space. प्रेम का सागर हाय गहरा होता जाए कास आए गहरा होता जाए बीच भंवर में क्या क्या डूबा पूछो मेरे दिल से हाय पूछो मेरे दिल से दिन जीवन कैसे जीता पूछो मेरे दिल से हाय पूछो मेरे दिल से. This is most remarkable. Your romance with your beloved is the romance with the God. If you very carefully look at, don't find fault in Bollywood songs, especially the romantic songs. They are all songs which you can sing with your God. Like, in a very powerful way. It's not just your beloved. When you sing the song, every single real song is always addressed to the ultimate one. You can ask how I can live without you. You in the sense that space. You in the sense that space. And that is the ultimate. He has so much strength. You see. He has so much strength. Our teachers, our sages are so powerful. Remarkable. But unfortunately, we lost all those things. Nobody mentions really about God. You see. They all speak about space. Because the space is all inclusive. And God is always inclusive. Because every person is his child. Are you following me? This is most essential, but how I create that kind of space? That every single evaluation simply ends. Actually, you are not understood the real essence of the evaluation. Are you following me? This is now the basic problem is we have to go back to those real teacherhood. Of course, you have to teach engineering, you have to teach chemistry, you have to teach mathematics, but along with that, how I can teach this kind of thing? That's the problem. Who will teach? Who will teach my son? Who will teach my daughter? Who will teach my young student? They are so innocent, man. You please look at them. They have so much problem. Especially that age is a very difficult age. They are in deep conflict. They have to create their self-identity. Every single thing they start doubting. They doubt even the parents. Their love, their affection, their trust. Please understand the state of their mind. They live in hell. That's why they function the way they function. Please don't find fault with them. You have to have tremendous affection for them. Because they are totally disturbed. They don't understand any value, any purpose, any meaning, any significance of what's happening around them. They very clearly see the way the parents live, the way they fight each other. Do you think they don't see the way you fight each other? So much of contradiction, so much of conflict. They very clearly see, as parents, what you say and the way you function, so much of disintegrity. Am I right? That's why I say this. They see very clearly the stupid things done by the elders. Especially they very clearly see. We are greedy, we are suspicious, we are lustful. That they very clearly see. And when you start advising about good things, how they can trust us? Am I right? Am I right? Impossible. Impossible. For them, everything has become a natak because we are in masks. They very clearly see we live with masks. They are hypocrites. That's why they can't trust. For them, the most difficult task is whom to trust. I follow. This is not easy. That's why you see, you may see their potential, but they're extremely hesitant to listen to you. Thank you so much. Do I make some sense? It's not that easy, you see. Please understand, one fact you must understand. 35 years back when I became a teacher, I was cursing myself. My father was a poor postmaster. With great difficulty, he was sent to a medical school. He thought this man will become a great doctor. He will become very wealthy, very rich, very powerful. And I went to become a teacher. He was shocked. अरे यार तेरे को क्या हो गया? तू तो डॉक्टर है, तेरे को पेशेंट को देखना है, पैसे कमाना है, but you're teaching. Of course, he was very kind, he was very generous, he never spoke anything about that. But you see, I was cursing myself of all things I became. I think I was the most useless guy, most incompetent. But now some light is coming, some hope is coming. I'm not joking. Billions of years of blessing have become a teacher. The only problem is I must become the right teacher. If I am able to touch one life, one young life, the job is done. Are you following? Now, please, ever curse yourself. Ultimate is when you start cursing yourself. That curse, sharp. Please don't ever curse anything in this life. And you curse your own parents, you curse your own people. You curse yourself so much. Life is so sacred. Please understand, please. It's a blessing, ultimate blessing that I am able to breathe. Have you seen this breathing? You observe your breathing. The way you get up in the morning, you are able to get up. Miracle. You are able to open your eyes. Miracle. You are able to eat. Miracle. The food is able to digest. Miracle. You are able to pass your urine. Miracle. You are able to sleep. You are able to walk. You are able to speak. You are able to sing. You are able to smile. Miracle. Because one day you are not able to speak. You are not able to get up in the morning. I am not able to stare you. You are not able to open your eyes. I find this is, thank you so much, this is most remarkable, the way you responded, the way you, but still it's not that simple. that clarity that looks like the process. Within a very important question about assessment. Because there were several questions which were raised yesterday about assessment and evaluation. Why assessment is important? Is it really essential? Of course, I understand the weakness of assessment, but whatever is possible with the limited capacity, with limited things, how we can make assessment more objective. And Professor Ramnarayan will speak about this. I request him to start today with the assessment.
Good morning once again. Very, very good morning. Good morning. Wonderful morning.
Good morning, sir.
It's always nice to see you still coming back. In spite of all that we do, you are still coming back. We sometimes wonder when we go back to class, students are still coming. In spite of all that we do, they are still coming. So it's always a relief. That, of course, from the students' point of view, they will say, oh, again this man has come. We have very short sessions this morning, but all are critical and quite significant. The first session relates to assessment, which I will do right away. Soon after that, Sudhakar will come back and as per the program, he will start off that component of teacher intelligence. Then I'll come back again and do a short session titled 3 in 1. I'll explain to you what that 3 in 1 is. Then there will be a conclusion. So we have all short sessions this morning. Of course, there will be a tea break in between. The first session that we have links us to the third circle, assessment. And the session is going to look at the fundamental principles of assessment. And that question that came yesterday was very valid. What is the difference between assessment and evaluation? If you look into the literature, there's a lot of debate and discussion whether these two are different. But in reality, the word assessment was used by the British. And when the Americans started looking at the worth of anything, they started using another word, evaluation. So actual origin is one is British and one is American. But having said that, if you look into the literature, the real difference is not difficult, or in fact it is not very easy, I would say, because assessment is of a performance. The performance is there, examination, test, something. So assessment is generally of a performance. Generally we link assessment to performance. At the end of that performance you give a grade, you give a mark, you give. So generally we link assessment to performance. Somebody has performed, student has performed, somebody has performed, and on the basis of that we say pass, fail, distinction, whatever. The word evaluation is of a process. Generally, you evaluate a curriculum, you evaluate a course, you evaluate a program. So evaluation has got an element of judgment built into it. There's a little more, it's a little more broad-based. So a very simple way to understand that is evaluation is of a process. So we evaluate, we don't say assessment of the curriculum, we often say evaluation of the curriculum. Curriculum evaluation, program evaluation, course evaluation. So an element of opinion gets integrated into that. But in assessment, again, having said that, assessment too can have that component, but be aware that assessment can be a little more focused, can be on a specific performance. While I give you this distinction, if you look into the literature, there's considerable confusion on these two words, and there's no absolute certainty in the distinction, some people use it interchangeably. For example, the controller of exams in some universities, for example in Manipal University in Manipal, is called Registrar Evaluation. Strictly speaking, that person should be called Registrar Assessment. But no university ever uses the word Registrar Assessment. We use the word Registrar Evaluation. So these two words are interchangeable. Now having said that, we now go on to this session. This is not a spelling mistake. It is not poem. Several times when I give this title, people come back and say there is a mistake in your program sheet. The word pro-em means introduction, preface, a preamble. So the word pro-em is basically an introduction to some fundamental aspects of assessment, which is what we're going to look at. I have used the word assessment, but please be aware they can be used synonymously. Now, let's start with this basic understanding. As teachers at all times, let us remember that it is assessment that will drive learning. That means what? Assessment will determine learning. If it is going to come in the exam, student will learn. If it is not going to come in the exam, the student may not learn. If you go to class and say, what I am going to teach you today will not come in exam, it is necessary for your life, for your profession, for your practice later, he will not be worried. He first wants to pass exam. Exam next week, next month. Let me pass exam. After that, my life, my profession, everything later. So, essentially, a student will learn what is most likely to be tested in the exam. So, we as teachers have this challenge. If they must learn something, make sure it is going to be tested, or at least he or she thinks that it is going to be tested. And that is what is meant by this statement. We as teachers must be aware, assessment will determine or will drive the learning. If something is important, make sure it is tested.
Sir, one question please. Sir, actually sometimes what happens, students just memorize something and they just perform well and they even get distinction. So how do we know that they are learned or they are just...
No way. Unfortunately, that is, today we are creating
They
only...
are not learning actually.
They are not at all learning. I mean, learning in the sense that the way you want them to learn. Sudhakar asked you that question. We teach, but are they learning the way we want them to learn? We are creating MCQ monsters at the end of a training or end of a professional course. They are very good in answering multiple choice questions for their next whatever it is, selection exam or whatever. They are very good in that. But we turn them out to be MCQ monsters. They are very good in recall. They are very poor in interpretation. They are probably incapable of problem solving. Unfortunately.
Here comes the art of question.
Art of question is one aspect of it, what we can do, but for that we have to keep.
Sir, but we cannot change the system, no. Actually, the process of examination, we must follow the process of examination.
Within the examination system also some things can be changed. So that if a student sees that questions are not only focusing on recall, if you are giving them interpretation, when they start seeing that in the question paper, their learning will also change. And I'm glad you raised that issue. I'm so happy that you said that, because you people are now thinking about these things. If you are going to test recall, they will be at the level of recall. If you are going to test at interpretation, they will start thinking about interpretation. If you give problems for them to solve, they will start solving problems. So the manner in which they learn is determined by how it is going to be assessed. And that's why I said assessment drives learning. Now, if you remember what Sudhakar did, the first circle, curriculum. When we want to teach, our guideline, our basis on which we are going to teach something is based on the curriculum. And curriculum is determined by the university, by the department, by a regulatory body, so on. That is as far as when we want to teach. Now I am asking you, when a student wants to learn, is he going to look at the curriculum? He will never look at the curriculum. You may have a fantastic curriculum design, but please remember, the students are not going to look at any curriculum. They will look at previous examination papers. That is the reality. Examination comes, students will say, please show me previous examination papers. Which question has come over and over again? So please remember this They will not look at your curriculum. You may have a fantastic curriculum, but no one is going to look at it. Because they want to see what has come in the exam, what is likely to come.
Sir, that is the trend what students follow, but it is not true always.
Well, some students may not, but the general trend, first thing is, I want to make sure that I pass my exam. After that, everything else. So the general trend is to see what has appeared, because it will be a little risky for a student who doesn't see the previous examination papers, because then he will not know what's going to come, everything will be a surprise. Some students concentrate only on the examination pattern or the papers and focus on them. It is previous examination papers that constitute to a great extent the focus of learning for any student.
This can be changed because
Can be changed.
if we keep asking the same questions.
Yes.
You know, some universities have this reputation that for last 5 years the same questions.
Same questions
are
come,
asked.
but
So
yes,
They
but-
say like
Yes,
so
but
it's really our fault.
that's true. But why the same question is being asked? Because that same thing is important. You can't ask trivial things. If you ask trivial things, then see what is important is what, even if it is repeated, I want the student to know that. So generally we
as
repeat.
teachers also and teaching, there are few topics that we help the students, this is very
Important.
important from examination
Yes,
point of
yes,
view.
yes.
So maybe it's not right to do that, is it?
I don't know whether examination point of view, but if it is important for them to learn, I think you must tell them that is what is the significance of importance. But for the student, what comes in the exam over and over again is important. He is not worried about anything else. If it's going to come in the exam or it has appeared several times, there is an important question. Because it has come several times. That is the ground reality which we have to accept. Now, if you see the curriculum, there is a planned curriculum which we design. We say basis of our teaching is that. And to me, curriculum is like the wind. Have we seen the wind? We have not seen the wind, but we have seen the effect of the wind. We have seen the good effect, the ill effect of wind. Curriculum is like that. You ask me, where is the curriculum? It's all over. Not within the four walls only. It can be outside the four walls. It's all over the place. So curriculum is all over. All the learning experiences a student gets is the curriculum. That is the planned curriculum. Then there is the taught curriculum. What do you teach? You teach what is most comfortable for you, what is convenient for you, what you like to teach, what is close to your heart, you will teach. What is difficult to teach, you will say library assignment. Or you will say self-directed learning. Something. Or you will give it to a junior if you have that power. You will say you take that topic. Because you don't want to take that topic. Generally we teach what we like to teach. Because we are very comfortable with certain topics, we teach that. Then there is a learned curriculum. Learned is learned by the student. The student will learn what he or she thinks is most likely to come in the exam. So if you look at these three circles, there is no overlap. In an ideal situation, all the three should more or less overlap. You cannot get a perfect overlap, but more or less these things. But I use a different color for taught. Taught is in white only because we don't have to teach everything. I mentioned that. At least you tell them these are the things you should know. That you go on telling them over and over again. You should know all these things. This is the source where you should read. That you tell them. And make sure they learn that. In other words, make sure that you also assess them. You may not be able to teach them. But the problem with assessment is, we are very fond of this objective assessment. And this word objective was used in teaching and learning. When Sudhakar said, curriculum is a collection of learning objectives. The word objective was used on the first day when we looked at the curriculum. That objective means what? Study objective, instructional objective. Objective of this session is to create awareness about assessment. Objective means what? Aim or goal. So that's the meaning of assessment. Now I am telling you the word objective has got a different meaning in the context of assessment. In assessment, this meaning is totally different. Because the word objective is used as an adjective. Objective question. Objective assessment. That means what? When do you say assessment is objective? Can we approach it negatively? When do you say assessment is objective? Can you define it negatively? What do I mean by asking you define it negatively?
how things are working, but still you know what is asked. Somehow you know.
What do you mean by objective assessment? Why is objective assessment so popular? You want to have a selection. You want to select. Subject. It is the opposite of subjectivity. Subjective means what? Personal views, bias, all those things come. Prejudice, bias comes in. Objective means no scope for prejudice, no scope for bias, no scope for variation. So the word objective, when used in the context of assessment, means freedom from bias, freedom from prejudice, consistency in marking, same mark. And that's why any selection exam, look at the state selection exam, any selection exam for anything is generally objective because they don't want to have variation in marking. I don't want prejudice and bias to come in the way. That's why any selection exam will want objective assessment, and we as teachers must endeavor always to be objective in our assessment. If we are subjective, which means student sees prejudice. If student sees bias, the student will say, the teacher doesn't like me. The teacher failed me. They will never say, I failed the exam. In an objective exam, they can't say anything. Oh, so many MCQs I got wrong. I'm failed. They will not say that. Essay question or any other oral examination, if you go, you will have this problem. And that's why it is objective questions which are predominantly the method of assessment in most situations where they don't want to have any confrontation or conflict. I recall when I was a medical student, before I used to go, before the oral, we used to have Viva Voce. Viva Voce means oral examination. After the theory exam, we have something called Viva Voce. For the oral examination, the day before that, I used to go for a haircut. Those days I had to go for a haircut because I had hair. Now it takes care. Now it takes care of itself. So I don't have to go. But the day before the oral exam, I'll go to the haircutting salon just opposite the hostel. And I'll tell that fellow, the barber, I want tomorrow's Viva. So he knows, Viva cut. He knows, Viva cut. Then he'll cut my hair. I used to have long hair, side locks. I never used to groom my hair. So he'll cut my hair, put a lot of oil, make it as if it's crew cut. I just returned from the army. Then I'll take my brother's crisp white shirt and pant and I'll go. When I wrote my theory exam, I didn't do all this. I went in my t-shirt, my jeans, sandals. I went, wrote the exam. I did not get groomed properly, but when I go for Viva, how many marks will you give me for my haircut and my dress? 10 marks I have for oral examination. How many marks will you give me for my haircut and my dress?
Directly they will not know marks, but there will be something in yours.
Failures. Okay, there is a student who answers every question of yours. Everything that you ask, he answers. But he is not professional, I'm not saying fashionable. He is not professionally dressed. He is very casual, very unprofessionally dressed, I'll put it there. Will you give him all the marks? Yes. You give? Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. You are very, you are able to say, okay, no, that's not important. What do you do? You'll give full marks, you'll give it.
Yes.
If he is answering all the questions, I
Wonderful.
So there is a point when
First impression.
I see. How many marks you give for first impression?
And we call it
काट सकते हैं वाइवा तो फेस टू फेस या फ्रंट टू फ्रंट वो अपमान करते हैं या सारे
and then they would always have this that because I was not dressed properly, I was not
20% marks
marks.
dressing
So
sense
that is
See, that is the ultimately when a person doesn't present himself well, only in the Viva, please remember this could be acting. For Viva you may go like that. Throughout the year, if you are not professionally dressed, if you are not neatly dressed, if you are not dealing appropriately with the people around you, only for the Viva you are doing some acting, then again it is all not serving its purpose. Why I am saying this is that when we look at objective assessment, we must let the student know your performance. Whatever it is, if you think something is important, you tell them you're going to be assessed on this. But when a student feels, I have answered every question, but I didn't get my full marks because the teacher did not like me. That means what? The teacher felt you are not appropriately or suitably dressed for the occasion. Dressing in the sense, at least you are not neatly dressed or whatever. If that is so, then I'm so glad some of you said I'll set aside all my prejudice or bias and I'll give my full marks. Wonderful, that's very nice.
Some of the students,
But
some of the students are coming in half time also.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's up to you. If you're able to say, I'm not saying one is right or wrong, you have a right to your opinion. Somebody else may say, no. If somebody is not, he's going to become a professional tomorrow. He's going to be an engineer. He's going to be an architect. I expect that he will have minimum, whatever it is. I'm not saying that it's any fashion or anything. It's just that he should meet minimum requirements as a professional. Only that. And that must be told.
But that should not reflect in his or her marks. You can say
Is it
at the end of
important?
the
Now I'm asking you, is it important? Is it important for a student to present himself or herself well?
Yes.
Is it important?
Yes.
If that is important, where are we assessing it?
We are assessing on only his knowledge, his or her knowledge. And at the end of Viva or examination, we are also saying that you should dress properly or you should have.
Of all the three things which Sudhakar said, knowledge, skills, attitude. We test knowledge, to some extent we test skills because we make them do some practicals. Attitude we never test. And where do they learn the attitudes? They never learn and we never assess. When you don't assess, it will never be learned. Attitudes are caught, they are never taught. Never ever think attitudes. If you start teaching attitudes, people will think you are giving a lecture, you are giving a sermon. Attitudes are caught, and from whom do they catch? From us. So, the best way you can put things across is through us being role models. I'll talk about this, but please remember, we often ignore attitudes because we can't assess them, we don't know how to assess them. If attitudes are important, tell them, every day I'm going to observe you. Every day when you come, I'm going to see whether you are submitting your assignments on time, you are coming punctually, you are relating professionally with your colleagues. If these things are important, tell them. They don't know. Clarify expectations. Tell them, when you come, because they come from different backgrounds, they don't know these things. Please tell them these are things that we expect of a professional. You are going to become a professional. 10 things that are important.
Sir, like in current examination, we have 30 marks with us.
Internal assessment.
And these things. So earlier university, I kept 10 marks for these things.
Wonderful.
Attendance,
Wonderful.
behavior in the class,
Yes.
and disturbances
Yeah.
and everything. But now I am not keeping. So shall we keep such marks or 5 marks or 10 marks to assess the
I'm so happy you mentioned that. If attitudes have to change, that must be inbuilt into your internal assessment. It cannot be a final assessment. Attitudes have to be something that is, but please clarify expectations. That means what Sudhakar said. Please let them know they are coming from different backgrounds. Please tell them, these are the 8 or 9 things I expect of you. If you do all this, I'll give you the 10 marks that I've set aside for attitude. Attitude means coming on time, submitting assignments on time, relating well with your professional colleagues, whatever. You give 10 things which you think are important components of attitude. Because the student doesn't know. He has come from a different background. He doesn't know coming on time is important.
So why should not this be included at the university level?
Well, it will vary because some things may be different for each of your discipline. Little bit, some variation. It's best that you do it at a departmental level. And no one is going to come in the way how you are going to decide your internal assessment.
It should be included as a guideline. that
You can,
do
general
that.
guidelines, yes, but you may give the specifics. Wonderful.
Sir, I would just like to share an experience here. We had 5 marks as part of classroom interaction.
Yes.
Where everything
Yeah.
was seen like this. But then later on we found there were a lot of prejudices and bias that was reported by
Yes.
students for teachers. So we had to convert it into an objective assessment.
The problem with this type of thing is students will always feel that the teacher is biased because as long as we are dealing with human beings, subjectivity is inevitable. Some amount of inbuilt, because your background, your upbringing will determine that. Yeah.
When we are checking the copies, a copy where the answer is written very neatly, our first reaction is very favorable.
Yes, yes.
Okay, as compared to where the answer may not have all the But if
all the
only
content,
one
yes,
we may end up giving same marks to both of them.
correct,
So we are
yeah.
also human beings.
It is there, we cannot, we can only minimize. Please remember, as long as we deal with human beings, we cannot eliminate bias. We cannot eliminate subjectivity, we can minimize, and that is exactly what this session is about. How do we minimize subjectivity? And we have to remember, when we function as teachers, we must try to be as objective as possible, try to minimize subjectivity, which is what we are going to see. And the criticism against essay questions, exactly what you are saying. I'll take it, essay question, because essay questions are not popular for assessment only because they say so much mark variation can come. And essay questions are usually considered as subjective. At least it is more subjective than the multiple choice questions, because you cannot get the same mark. It will vary depending on handwriting, presentation, organization, unwritten attributes. But somebody else may say, you may say, I am not worried how he has written. Content is there, all points are there, I'll give full marks. He is fine. But somebody else will say, essay question, he has to present it, organize it. Handwriting, it's not handwriting, it is just legibility, whatever, systematic approach, whatever. If you think that is important, that's fine. And both of you are right.
No, because it reflects a larger attitude towards life.
Yeah, that, you have that opinion, but he may be right in his own opinion. He says, he knows his content, and my objective is to assess him, and he has got the content, I'll give full marks. So that is fine. It's fine. We are not finding fault, and that is bias, but the student will be unhappy with you. Student will say, this teacher doesn't like me, he is my very good teacher, because he gives full marks. See, for the student, he becomes the good teacher, role model, because it doesn't matter. And students perceive it that way. That is where the problem comes. Most problems in any university, it happens because students lose faith in the exam. They feel the teacher is biased, or the teachers are biased. If they feel that day, it's going to be very difficult for you to build that safe learning environment. This is another thing that ruins the safe learning environment. They feel that it is not, even the assessment is not safe in the sense it is not fair. Now, let us see. The problem with essay question is, we give a lot of scope for a student to write. So we say, essay questions encourage bluffing, multiple choice questions encourage guessing. What do you want your student to do? Yes, you tell me. See, MCQs, nothing. They only have to circle those bubbles are there. You simply shade those bubbles. That MCQs. No scope for any creativity, no scope for anything. Essays, you can go on writing. Bluff. Bluff in the sense, even if you don't know, you got. Have you not had? All of us have gone through it. There is a short note question. I don't know anything, but I'll simply write one full page. Something or not I will write. It doesn't mean anything. But at the end of it, the poor teacher, he will read this. There was a teacher who came to class and he was reading the marks of the student. He said, my dear students, today I will read your marks. Roll number 1, half. Roll number 2, 1.5. Roll number 3, 1. So somebody in the class said, out of. He didn't say anything, he just continued. Roll number 4, 1. Roll number 5, 2. Roll number 6, half. Again somebody said, out of. He said, out of pity. Very often that's what we do. We see something, out of pity we give 1 mark. We simply say, at least this much he has written. So out of pity you give that 1 mark or 2 mark, which you cannot get in MCQ. MCQ you cannot get. It is out of pity that we give. When you bluff, there is a scope that out of pity you will get 1 or 2 marks. But MCQ, if it is wrong, it is wrong. It is absolute. It is absolute. There is no way. So that is the risk with essay question. Now I am going to give you a handout which we will read together on what is the purpose of an essay. Essay is not to be condemned. Essay has got a place in assessment. So we will look at essay, we will read this, and then we will explore this issue of essay question, whether we really need to. If we retain essay, most of us have essay questions in our assessment. So just make sure that we use it in such a way that there is as much objectivity. What else? Some extras? What else? We'll read this together. Anyone? We'll read this together. This is from a book. I've given you the reference at the bottom. The Art of Teaching by Gilbert Haydn. But we'll read this together. The essay question. Thinking back over the history of education, it is interesting that in other times when people were well educated, the higher examinations were all oral. The Greeks and Romans had excellent schools, but when their children were being tested, they had to recite poetry or make speeches. There is a little exam in Shakespeare, but it is by word of mouth. In the great medieval universities, the graduating masters and doctors announced the thesis and defended it by debating against critics and rivals, a custom which still survives in the oral part of our own doctoral or PhD examinations. But the written examination, with all the heads bent over the same paper and brows wrinkled and names bitten over the same problems, does not seem to be heard of until the 19th century. Perhaps it goes with the enormous increase in population, both inside and outside the schools, and with the elaboration of modern industrial techniques. A room full of candidates for a state examination, timed exactly by electric clocks and supervised by watchful foremen, resembles nothing so much as an assembly line at the Fort Works. This is proved by the fact that specialists in educational technique are getting closer and closer to the production of an examination system which can be run like a machine. Their aim is to produce a series of wholly objective tests of learning and intelligence comparable to the laboratory tests of blood and lymph and tissue which are made by big hospitals for hundreds of different patients who never see the examiner but merely receive his verdict. The papers are made up by an expert but marked on the assembly line technique. The expert merely devises the questions and puts down the right answer and the wrong ones for each question. The right answer is there on the paper. The examinees have only to recognize it. Then a staff of girls, trained like lamp testers in a factory, runs through each paper, matching the numbers with a master list. The result is the candidate's mark. From the teacher's point of view, this is delightfully easy. For testing memory work, it is very useful. Why should anyone trouble to go around his pupils one by one, asking for the dates of the European revolutions or the valencies of the elements, when he can have their knowledge checked more rapidly, less personal? But at the level above memorization, these tests are deceptive. A test entirely composed of such questions must fatally alter the student's attitude to the work he is doing, because he must, for the purposes of the test, see it as a congeries. Congeries means collection, accumulation, a accumulation of unrelated little facts. And yet the sense with which teachers must strive hardest to develop in their students is the sense of structure, the power of grasping a broad historical process, a large geographical nexus, the plot and purpose of a great book. As students become more inured means accustomed, as they become more used to this type of examination, their attention is shifted away from these broader questions to atomic facts which can be learned almost entirely without real knowledge and real education. So essay questions have a place. You can't just banish essay questions. If you want them to have a holistic view, globally attack a problem, essay questions have got a place. Now please look at the reverse. I don't want you to answer the questions. Answer is all what we read. We read the answer first. Please look at the reverse. There are three sets of questions. Set A, Set B, and Set C. Set A has got one question. Set B has got two questions. Set C has got three questions. My question to you is this. When you want to assess a student and you want to be a fair assessor, which one will you choose? Take 1 minute each day. Quickly look at it, take a decision. If you want to assess your students and you want to be fair in your assessment, which one will you choose? Answer is same for all three.
Fair assessment is. सब कुछ अगर जानना हो तो नीचे में सब कुछ असल में वो कह रहे हैं ना
What is your choice? C. C.
Sir, as far as fairness is concerned, C is
C.
best option.
C.
If you talk about fairness, then C is okay. But if you want to actually evaluate the student, then C is not appropriate.
Understand.
Which one will you prefer?
Then A will be preferred.
A will be preferred for the fairness.
Okay, set C. Okay, wonderful. What do you think? Set C. Of course, it's my, the question I asked you is if you want to be fair as an examiner. We'll come to that. See, you're right. You're saying that. Any comment?
But I think other opinion is B.
B. Okay, fine. Then see, I asked you a question. You want to be fair. Fair means what? I don't want to have variation in marking. C is fine. If you want to have some sort of a mathematical precision, some sort of an objectivity, but there's a big but there. If the purpose of an essay is only to record, why give essay? If an essay is only to test recall, the purpose of an essay is defeated. An essay should go beyond recall. If you convert your essay questions to enumerate, list, name, then the very purpose of an essay is defeated. That brings us to a very important question. Why do we give essay questions? And that is what we will see. What is the purpose of an essay? We will try to answer that. Again, there are no absolute right and wrong answers. There's A, B, and C. There's a purpose for A, there's a purpose for B, there's a purpose for C. If you want to be as objective as possible, agree. C is going to give you that mathematical precision. But I want my student to do more than simply recall. And that is... Yes.
Sir, actually, here we are dealing with the two types of exams, closed book as well as open book. In that reference, how we are going to...
Okay. Actually, we should have another session entirely on open book. But anyway, generally open book is suitable for certain subjects, certain topics where problems, the concepts are being tested. Ability to solve problems and interpret. That is where open book will come. You have access to everything. In today's world, students must learn not just to master information, to manage information. Information management. You have access to information. Use that information to solve problems. So, it requires a lot of training on our side. As teachers, we must be able to design questions that will not be on recall. So, interpretation and problem solving can be tested in an open book. Whereas if you are going to test recall, then it is not suitable. So, that requires a lot of forethought before you administer. Generally, if you make everything as open book, even in your own subject, certain areas are suitable for open book. Certain areas are suitable for, they have to, because some basic knowledge is required. So, the first part, the side that you are seeing, many a time, the teacher would like to test whether the pupils are capable of originating, organizing, expressing ideas, integrating ideas in a global attack on a problem. For this, the greater freedom of response provided by the essay is a must. Such freedom is not provided by the objective test. Essay question should be used primarily for the measurement of those learning outcomes that cannot be measured by objective test items. Now, when you look back at the previous 3 sets of questions, set C will be more objective, agree, minimum variation or less variation. But in doing that, you have sacrificed the very purpose of an essay question. We want the question in such a way that the student will compare and contrast. Look at set B. Which system is better? The student is asked to give an opinion. He may take a stand against your own. It is not what he writes. It is how he argues. I'll give credit. He may differ from you. So that is also, and A2 has got a place. You are looking at his ability to organize content. And that is why it is important. Essay questions have a place, but assessment becomes difficult. The challenge for us is assessing of essay questions, because variation can come and you are right in the way you do it. You have a right to assess a student, but variation will come, but the student will see that variation as bias and prejudice. Now, look at essay questions, and we have 2 extremes. Extended response essay is the A type That is the first type. Where set A, where you have a lot of scope for the student to write. Objective questions give you no scope for the student to write anything more than just marking the answer. In between, what we get is a restricted response essay. If you look at B and C, set, these represent you are restricting the response. B restricts to some extent, C restricts it even more. But the more you restrict, the more objective. And the more objective you become, more you sacrifice the purpose of an essay question. I want my student at the end of it to be creative, to be able to, but the problem is assessment. Our conflict is that. That is our conflict. But please be aware, let us not condemn essays altogether. And if you convert essays to simply recall and recollection, then you can as well give MCQs. Why do you want to give essays? Keep this in mind when we give essay questions. Now, if you frame the question so that the response will be restricted in content, which is focused, that is B and C, and the way in which the question will be long, and if the question is long, the answer will be short. Somehow we feel essay question must be short so that the answer will be long. That is our conception, that an essay question must be short so that the answer will be long. The longer the question, the shorter the answer. Because if you frame the question very specifically and the student has to respond, then naturally that response will be very specific and focused. You'll get the points or marks if you are right. If you don't write anything else, you won't get. And that is why, if you look at answer paper of a student, you can have a situation where one examiner has given 37%, another person has given 68%. Both are right. I am not finding fault. The 68% examiner will say, after all, this is an undergraduate student. After all, he is not going to shake the world. After all, he has written this much. Doesn't matter, give. But the person who has given 37 will say, there are some basic mistakes in what he has written. He has not understood the fundamentals. He has gone wrong in those cardinal areas. I cannot afford to give him more than this. Fine, both of you are right. That is where the student sees prejudice and bias. The teacher is not at fault. You have that background and you feel that. But you can argue this endlessly. But in the end, so what can we do to minimize this variation? It is inevitable. Same experience, same expertise. I give paper to you. I give two of you. I imagine I am also one examiner. Tomorrow you give me the same paper after 2 years. Imagine I don't have memory of what happened today. After 2 years you give me one answer paper, which I have valued 2 years ago. My mark will be different. My mark will be different because so many things have happened. My own approach has changed. It will change. So accept the fact that variation is inevitable in essay. What we can do is we can improve. We can only minimize variation. We cannot eliminate variation. How can you minimize? One is what is known as a marking scheme. Marking scheme is, it's not model. Many people think marking scheme means model answer. It's not model answer. Any subject, whatever be your discipline, before you mark, if there are 5 or 6 of you who are going to mark the papers, you sit together and decide the marking scheme. What is the marking scheme? It revolves around 4 C's. Any marking scheme in any subject will revolve around 4 C's. Cleanliness, correctness, completeness, cleanliness, and creativity. I'll explain this in a moment. The 4 C's of any marking scheme in any subject. Correctness means what? How correct you want your student to be. Will you penalize him or her if they have written wrong things? You decide. All of you, 8 of you who are going to mark, you decide. If there are wrong responses, will I penalize the student or I will just ignore it? You decide beforehand. So that 8 of you are more or less doing the same thing. How correct you want them to be. Will you tolerate incorrect responses? Then how complete you want them to be. If there are 8 ideas, do I want all the 8 ideas, or if 6 ideas are there, I will give full marks. You decide. The 8 examiners sitting together will decide. There are 8 ideas for a particular answer. If 6 out of 8 are there, I would give full marks. Otherwise, what will happen? I will say, oh, 6 ideas are there, I will give full marks. She will say, I want all the 8 ideas because this is important. Then variation will come and the student will say, I'm a good examiner, she's a strict examiner. See, if 8 of you decide beforehand, this is the stand we take, that is marking scheme. Third one is cleanliness. I've used this word cleanliness, you were talking about that. Organization, presentation. Essay is an opportunity for a student to present. And as professionals, they have to make presentations. Presentation not just in writing an essay. Whatever they do in life, they have to make presentations. Organization, systematic approach, all that is important. If these things have to be inculcated, you have to tell them these things matter. You may write everything, but you may not get the full marks unless you present it in such a way that it is acceptable or professionally acceptable. So and the last one, creativity, well, creativity is possible in humanities, in arts. You can look at that. Even in some scientific subjects, if you have 2 or 3 theories, you can say, name the 3 theories, take up any one theory and give your arguments in support of one theory or some one concept. Whatever, it's possible. So what I'm trying to tell you is, it is possible for you to have a marking scheme that will minimize, I'm not saying it will eliminate bias. Next one is, of course, taking average. If students don't have access to the answer paper, here I understand, they can come and discuss with you, which is good. But it so happens that the mark you give is finally translated into the final mark, then what we need to do is have the same paper marked by 2 people. Average of 2 examiners' marks will become the mark of the student. That way, some minimizing of bias will happen. Otherwise, bias will remain. So you can minimize bias by taking average. And that's why it's important to remember, when you conduct essay questions, if you are giving a student access to the paper, an opportunity for him or her to come and discuss with you, that's fine. But even then, it is always safer to have the paper marked independently by 2 examiners, an average of 2 examiners' marks, if it is going to be the ultimate mark for the student. So these are ways you can do that. Now we have looked at types of essay questions, the extended response and restricted response. Restricted response is more objective. We have seen how to make marking of essay questions reliable. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. The first question, objectivity in assessment means what? Consistency in marking. Is it true or false? True. This is true. Freedom from bias, freedom from prejudice, that is what objectivity is. Second, restricted response essays are more objective than extended response essays. True or false? True. Multiple markers and marking scheme improve reliability of essay questions. True. What did I do just now? What did I do just now? I projected 3 true-false items. I asked for responses. What did I do just now? What did I do just now? Yeah, but what did I do just now? I projected 3 true-false items. I asked you to respond. I broke the monotony. It was a dipstick I used. I used a dipstick, but what did I do? But what did I do? I asked questions, but what did I do in the process? Assessment. Yes, this type of assessment which was not threatening you. I didn't say that based on that response you will get your attendance certificate. I didn't say 3 marks from this will go for your performance appraisal. I didn't say any of those things. I didn't threaten you. This type of assessment is called assessment for learning. I have been talking for some time. I want to make sure you are with me. I used assessment for learning, to reinforce the learning, to reiterate the learning, to drive home the learning, to get those ideas entrenched in your mind. And that is assessment for learning as against assessment of the learning which happens at the end of the learning. When you use assessment during the learning process, it is assessment for learning. And that is called formative assessment. When you use assessment at the end of the learning, that is semester examinations, at the end, pass, fail, distinction, that is summative. And that's why we as teachers, most of the time use only summative. Even in class exam, you say 3 marks from this will go for internal assessment. Then it is summative. Formative assessment is assessment for learning. I'll give you an example. I had taken a series of classes and I went to a class one day and I told the class, today you will have a surprise test. I brought you 20 multiple choice questions. The entire class said, no, not allowed, unfair. They started shouting, 145 students, and they all shouted, they said, this is not allowed, this is not fair, you didn't announce. I said, please remember, this relates to the 8 classes I have taken in the last 2 weeks. I have prepared 20 multiple choice questions. Please respond. They said, no, unfair, no, no. There was so much of noise. I said, okay, let's come to an agreement. We'll come to an agreement. Please, I have brought the papers, please take it. Don't write your name, don't write your own number or register number. You may consult one another, you may look into your notes, make as much noise as possible, but please answer and return it to me. So there was so much noise, they were so happy, they grabbed the paper, they did all, 20 minutes, they finished everything, put it on the table, I finished that collection. Then rest of the class I took for another 20 minutes. Then next week when I met them, I took it back to them and said, thank you all for responding. I noticed that almost all of you went wrong in question number 1, 4, 5. Almost everybody went wrong in 1, 4, 5. Why? Was the question difficult? Or you understood it wrongly? I do not know. I clarified what is wrong with question. Why you people have got wrong? I do not know. Maybe I didn't word it well. I clarified. I am so happy most of you got question number 9, 10 and 11 right. It's an important concept. I am happy you got it right. What was the purpose? Then I went through all the 20 MCQs. And then I explained to them that the purpose of this is for me to reinforce. I was not interested in who went wrong. I was interested what went wrong, why it went wrong. That is formative assessment. And what is formative assessment? Formative assessment is what is used during the learning. Summative assessment is used at the end of the learning. Formative assessment may not have a mark. Formative assessment need not have a name. It can remain anonymous. Formative assessment is to reinforce the learning. And I say formative assessment is characterized by these F's. That is, first is it facilitates learning. It gives feedback. It is frequent. It is faceless. It can remain anonymous. It is friendly. And it is fast. And one more F is there, which is hidden there. It can be fun. So the last one. So this is what I want you to remember. What is formative assessment? Please use formative assessment more frequently, and if you use it, learning will be enhanced. The F part has gone down. It is there, but it is below the screen. FUN, fun part. So these are the F's of formative assessment. Yes.
Add something to this. When we are assessing the multiple choice question in semester end examination, very often a pattern emerges.
Yes.
That if 40 students have taken the test exam, almost 35 to 38 students will get a certain pattern of answers wrong.
Yes, yes.
And all this while I used to think they cheated, so somebody knew the wrong answer and that wrong answer was.
That is often because of misunderstanding or
But
wrong.
I think what you
Yes.
said is very relevant. Maybe what we taught in the class was not properly understood by the students.
Possibly. It's only a scope for insight and introspection. I conclude with a quotation, and that is important for us to understand. That is, our present method of conducting examinations is a method of dealing with the enemy, not a method of dealing with people. It is a method of surprise attack, asking oblique and strange questions, and when the student goes wrong, we say, ha ha ha, student has gone wrong, I have won, you have lost. Where is the victory? It is a total loss. When we both fail, that is the ultimate. Permit me to go, I have to go for that chemistry conference inauguration. So I will come back to this.
Please take a break of 5 minutes. Yes, yes. क्या बीच में आवाज आ रहा है?
हर जगह हर एक चीज इम्प्लीमेंट नहीं होता।
And every Monday, Thursday morning,
कैसे कर सकते हैं एनवायरमेंटल नहीं कर सकते। आधी चीजों को adopt करना है, आधी नहीं।
it's nice. We want to select the
काम खत्म।
primary field. Management, what I feel that primary field.
सर बताइए
Correct.
उसमें क्या है?
What is the subject I am teaching? The student should think about. The secondary feeling is I am sitting here, but I am thinking, okay, what I should do, what I have done. That is my understanding. Right? I am sitting here. Yes.
People whom you meet, people you reach, आप इतना शक्त हो जाएंगे। Ultimate miracle is when you are able to reach people and you help them to flower the potential. And what is space? Why I don't have that space? I don't have that space. It's very clear. When I'm distracted, I'm disturbed, I'm restless, I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I'm anxious, I'm tense. I can't even sit for 2 minutes. Mind starts wandering, mind starts running away, mind is moving. That also shows that I have no space, right? So this space is important. Why I don't have that space? Why there is no space in my mind, in my heart? Because I have a problem, am I right? When you live in this world, there are problems. You will come across all kinds of problems. As long as you live with the problem, that problem will occupy the space. Your space is occupied by that problem. And when you deal with that, I'm not saying you don't have no effect to deal with problems, but some problems can be so difficult, they can be so chronic, they can be so tough. All your energy, your passion, your joy, your effort, your energy is drained by that one problem. That problem will always follow you. Wherever you go, the problem is always there in the back of your mind. Whatever you do, sometimes once in a while you may little forget the problem, but the problem always comes back, starts haunting you, starts disturbing you, starts distracting you, starting creating tremendous problem for you. In fact, you live with multiple problems. Right? So the basic function of education, intelligence is to help my son, my student, my daughter to live without any problem in this world. 60, 70, 80, 90 years. When you live in this world, is it possible to live in this world without a single problem? You may ask, it's almost an impossible question, but It's the most important question you must ask yourself. Because when you don't have a problem, you have immense space. Shall we proceed? This is the most practical session. It's not a philosophical session. But you must see one fact. Buddha has no problem. Absolutely not a single problem. That means you must very clearly see the nature of this problem. This is most essential. If you want to end your problem, every single problem which is bothering you, you must understand very clearly what is the nature of this problem which is bothering me, which is occupying all my space. Are you following me? First thing you must understand, from outside, externally, your problem may look different. Financial problem, sex problem, family problem, health problem, work problem, relationship problem, God problem, it can be any kind of problem. But every single problem, internally, the root is same. This you must very clearly see. So that in one stroke, right now, instantly, immediately, you can end every single problem which is bothering you. That's intelligence. Before you leave this hall, you can end every single problem. So that you become fresh, so that you become new.
But do we need to solve that problem or we need to remove that problem?
First is understanding the problem.
After that,
It will disappear, it will dissolve, it will disappear. You don't have to make any effort to solve that problem. That's the beauty of this problem. That's the beauty of Buddha. You don't have to make an effort, because the more effort you make, you create the problem more complicated. That's exactly what's happening. You are very correct. First understand what is the nature of this problem. The moment you understand, in fact, there is no problem. In fact, there is no problem. I'm going to show you. In fact, there is no problem. Every single problem is created in a stupid way. Every single problem is actually no problem. I create that problem. And then I struggle with that problem. Because you can't solve the problem because there is no problem. There is a problem. Now we look into this. But this is not that simple. You have to understand very clearly. Because in spite of all things, still you live with problem. The most intelligent way to live in this world, to live without a single problem. Because at the end of the day, when you go back to your home and you sleep, you must sleep so well like a child. And the sleep is ultimate. Ultimate blessing is your ability to sleep. The moment you hit the pillow, you are in deep sleep. And when you get up in the morning, you are fresh. You are so fresh. But you can't sleep because tension. You have problems. Good people, but privileged with problems. Shall we proceed? Shall we proceed? What is the nature of this single problem? This you must very clearly see. Every single problem, the basic nature is same. The root is same. What is the nature of every single problem which is disturbing me, which is preventing me from relaxing? Shall we proceed? This is exploration. Okay, this is exploration. Please. Thank you so much. You have listened with so much of trust and so much of affection. Last time, you please listen to us. I only want to wish that you must be able to solve your problem, so that you will get that space. So what is the nature of every single problem which is bothering you? Tell me anything. What is the nature of expectation? This nature, this स्वभाव, you must understand. What is the स्वभाव of onion? Onion का एक स्वभाव होता है, am I right? उसका स्वभाव क्या है?
To kill the viruses.
Oh my God! That will is function. What is the स्वभाव of onion? उसका स्वभाव होता है, which is so unique. Nothing else in this world has the स्वभाव of onion, am I right? What is the स्वभाव of garlic? Whatever has been created in this universe, every single of creation has its own unique स्वभाव, am I right? Similarly, what is nature? What is the स्वभाव of my problem? I will tell you. Whenever I go my hair, like Ramnarayan, I at least have some hair. So once in a while I have to go to barber, okay? And I have to go to barber in Manipal, Tiger Circle. That is my barber, super hairdressers. I always go to that particular barber, Buddha barber. Excellent barber, and the way he cuts my hair, absolutely no pain, no suffering. And the most remarkable thing about the barber is he is a silent barber, he never speaks. You know how barbers speak. But this barber is a Buddha, silent barber, and the way he treats me, I love that barber so much. Excellent fellow, wonderful fellow, nice fellow. Oh, I love him so much. Whenever that barber is not there, I am not going to have a haircut and go back home without having my haircut. Super barber, last 30 years, the same barber has cut my hair. So one Sunday morning I got up, I am so happy, I want to rest, I want to relax. Fortunately she has gone to Maike, so I want to relax. I get up in the morning, I make a cup of tea for myself, newspaper has come, I want to sit, I want to drink, I want to relax. 7 o'clock in the morning, suddenly, I hear somebody is pressing the doorbell. Somebody is pressing the doorbell at 7 o'clock in the morning. Arey yaar, ye kaun aa gaya? Ye kaun si musibat aa gayi? These people are telling you. Until morning they come in, but the most difficult challenge is to ignore when somebody is pushing out. But impossible. You have to get up and you have to go and see who has. Reluctantly I get up. I reluctantly get up and open the door and who has come? How do you know? Who has come? Who has come?
Wife coming.
Oh my God! Don't mention. I have taken all the precautions. She cannot come. Impossible. No, but who has come? You are correct. Barbara has come. In last 30 years, first time he has come to my home. And he has come. He is standing there. The kada hai. मेरा तरफ देख रहा है. Also I look at him. I look at him. I look at his face. I understand. Something is terribly wrong. The way he is standing, that face, those tears, and the way he is standing. I immediately know something is terrible. I ask him, अरे बाबू क्यों आया? सवेरे सवेरे क्यों आया? क्या हुआ? क्या मुसीबत है? क्यों आया? बहुत मुश्किल से says, सर जी, बहुत मुश्किल है जी, बहुत मुश्किल है जी, माँ बहुत बीमार है जी, अभी गाँव जाना जी, सर जी अभी गाँव जाना जी, सर जी, will you please give me 1,000 rupees? Why you are so silent? He's asking me, not you. पैसे की बात आई तो सब खामोश.
Sir, we are living the situation.
I don't understand. Just joking.
That's why we are silent.
अब क्या करें? आप दीजिए. पर ऐसा एड्रेस दे देगा क्या आप मेरे को बर्बाद कर रहे हैं? 1,000 रुपये दूं क्या दूं? क्यों दूं? कैसे दूं? No, I want to give, but I want to give. Why 1,000? I can give 5,000, but
Reason.
what is the reason?
38 trust, genuine reason.
That's okay. 30 years. Every time you are going, given him paisa. बिना पैसे के नहीं किया है. पैसे दिया है. जो भी गया है पैसा दिया है. No, I want to give. I'm honest. I want to give, but
वापस देगा कि नहीं?
नहीं वापस भी देगा शायद. नहीं भी देगा तो no problem. Not that's not the issue. Issue is what?
Right to find out the genuine reason.
Genuinity.
जाके पी सकता है. है कि नहीं?
Was he lying?
है कि नहीं? है कि नहीं? है कि नहीं? Possible हो? तो कैसे दूं?
In the morning, 7 o'clock, I don't think somebody is coming to.
I used to do that. So he can also do that. क्या करें? कैसे करें? To give or? But one thing is sure, I'm in a problem. Am I right? I'm in a? To give or?
For only 5,000, it may not last. Only 500.
Depending on the stage.
First, you give him a cup of tea.
I can do that, but later,
Then later
I'm not in the mood to drink a tea. You see, he's a okay.
You said he's a Buddha, so you should not trust him.
क्या बोलते हैं जी? कुछ करो. But my problem is very simple, man. See, anything is okay, but I can't tolerate somebody deceiving me. Alright? And every person deceives me, you see. Everybody thinks this face is not, this face, face, you know. This face is a good face to put on topi.
Sir, at this point, you have to leave all your past experiences.
No, I understand that, but not possible, man. This topi, you see. And one topi, 35 years back, my mother-in-law put such a big topi, makmal topi. I'm not still recovered from that topi, oh my God. If you come to my home, the cupboard is full of topis only, okay? She is very happy. She thinks this fellow deserves a big topi.
Sir, you cannot punish your mother-in-law's fault. Somebody else.
These are all very family secrets. You should not go out of this hall, please.
But your nature is trusting.
But I am in a problem because I have to give. I have to decide. Or not.
After giving 1,000, you have not resolved your problem. Even you will think about it.
Excellent. You see, I may give. That point of time, I may give. I may feel, you gave, you may go away, but you still in
Problem.
पता तो करना था ना यार, पूछता था ना, पूछता था यार, हाँ? क्यों देता है?
One very good saying is there, neki kar darya mein dal.
That's all I think I know, man. I know all those things, but still I'm in a problem. Suppose I will say, I can be very firm. I say, नहीं यार, माफ कर दे यार. नहीं यार, पैसे नहीं यार. तू जा यार. कल देखना यार. I can do that. He may go away, but still I'm in a problem. You सुधाकर, you साला तो खुदा के बारे में बोलता है. तू इतना करता. ये घर कोई नहीं सकता है साला. I'm still in. That means whether you give or whether you don't give, you are still in it. Not only that whole Sunday is destroyed. Not only the whole Sunday, next whole week is because of this. Because I'm a good man. And what is the nature of this problem? No, whatever it is, but still I'm in it. This is the nature of my problem. What is the nature of this problem? Why I am in a problem? Be very practical. This is the problem. Am I right? This is the problem. And what is the nature of this problem? Why I am in a problem? To give or not to give? Am I right? That means what? What is the nature of this problem? To give or not to give?
Listen to God or listen to mind?
What is this problem?
Conflict.
Oh, very good, excellent. No, what is the thing which is telling? What is the beautiful word use? What is that? I am in a conflict. This you must very clearly see. Every single problem which is bothering you is nothing but a conflict. Very carefully observe. Every single nature of every single problem is nothing but a conflict. To do or not to do. To go or not to go. To leave or not to leave. To give or not to give. To eat or not to eat. Ask them. They are so terribly in conflict. To eat or not to eat. To speak or not to speak. To love or not to love. To trust or not to love. To play or not to play. To work or not to work. To prepare or not to prepare. Every single thing is nothing but a conflict. You see this fact very clearly. Don't blame any person. You are in a conflict. And the conflict is so difficult. Some of the conflict is so deep. Because you have act, man. Life is action. Because you are not very sure what should be my right action. For that situation, in that incident, with that person, what? Forget about Baba. Your father may ask you. Your great बाप may ask you. बेटा बहुत मुश्किल में हूँ. अरे यार कोई पैसा दे दे यार. अरे good people but are still in conflict. Are still in conflict. Forget about Baba. मैंने कहा I can't even trust my own father. कैसे पता? मेरे से पैसे लेके बहन को दे सकता है. I'm right. It's a simple fact. There are always some conflict. I'm right. What is the nature of this conflict? What is the nature of this conflict? What is the nature of this? You have to go explore, you have to go to the root. I can't relax, I don't have space because I have a problem. The nature of every single problem is bothering nothing but a conflict. What is the nature of this conflict? Be very careful, observe, please see. What is the nature of every single problem, every single conflict? To give or not to give? What is the thing which is preventing you? Sudhakar, be Hoshiyar, be careful, Tobidayega, Jagu, don't give.
Past experience.
Be very careful, be very practical. Don't give. What are those? Don't give. What are they? Don't give. Don't give. Be very practical. Sudhakar, don't give. Be very practical. What are they? Don't give. Something is telling you, something is warning you, something is preventing you, something alert you. Don't give. From that is coming. Don't give. From that is coming. Who is telling you? Be very practical. Who is telling you? Don't give. Your mind is telling you. Your mind is telling you. Your mind is telling you. Don't give. What is the nature of don't give?
But sir, another mind is telling you give.
Excellent. Something is telling you, please give. दे दो. साला बच जाएगा. दे दो. Give. What is that? From where is coming? Don't give is coming from the
Subconscious mind.
What is the thing from where is coming? Then the heart starts speaking. Heart never speaks, heart only beats. From where that giving is coming?
Conscience.
It's also coming from the mind. Don't give is also coming from the mind. Give also coming from the mind. From whose mind? Both things are coming from my mind. So please go ahead. Are you seeing? Please see. What is nature of don't give? Don't give kya hai? Don't give. What are they? Don't give. Be very practical. Don't give. What are they?
Too much said no.
There are two words, am I right? Don't is a word, give is a what is give? Give is also a word. There are nothing but words. So what are the nature of this every single word? Please, this is extremely essential. Because we live by words. Sala, Suvati Bachi. What is that? Everything is word. Love, affection, trust, love, everything is a word. Every single life is decided by the way you use your words. All effect, all problems, all difficulty, all impact is nothing but words. What is the nature of this word? What is this word? This you must very clearly understand because we are professors. We teach and all teaching, all learning is only because of what is textbook? Nothing but a collection of words. Right. Is it possible to live this world without using a word? Whole education is based on A for apple, B for. That means education begins with using. When you were born, you had not single word ever. You didn't even know you had mother. That word was not known to you. She is my ma, ye meri ma hai. Then ma tells you, beta, my mother, my teri ma, my teri ma, my teri ma. Teri ma. First word I learned is, this is my. I was not aware that you are mine. I knew that you are somebody, but I never knew that you are mine. You got me first word, am I right? Then you start collecting so many words. Am I right? Education begins by collection of, you start collecting more and more words, more and more words, more and more words. More words you collect, you become more successful. Am I right? Am I right? That means you live by words. What is the nature of this word? Don't give and give. Don't give, give. What is it? This you must very clearly see. So that you will understand what is the nature of this power of this word. Word is ruling you. What is word? ये कहाँ से आता है? ये कहाँ से आता है? Be very practical. From where the word is coming? What is this word? It is coming from the what is this? Whatever comes to the mind, what is the basic function of mind? Mind thinks, okay? When mind thinks, what it generates? The thoughts generates thoughts. So what is word?
Expression of knowledge.
Expression of your thought. Expression of your thoughts. So what is conflict? To give or battle between thoughts. Battle between your thoughts. And the thoughts are coming from your own. So what is the battlefield where you fight every single battle, every single problem? Because of your real Kurukshetra. This is the real Kurukshetra. Every single battle is because of your multiple thoughts. Every single problem is a conflict. Conflict is nothing but multiple battle between your own thoughts or your words. Don't blame anybody, don't curse anybody. Every single battle, what you're fighting, every single problem is bothering you is nothing but a conflict between your inability to select the word, the thought. Without thought, you cannot act. Please understand. Is there any action without any thought? Can you act without thought? I'm not saying thoughtless action, but every single action, what is the basis of every single action? A thought has to come. A thought has to come. That thought will make you act. And the action can be of deep conflict. Are you following me? Shall we take a break? So what I told, I have to have a space. That space is only possible when I am able to relax. I am able to tranquil. I can't relax, I can't be tranquil, I can't be peaceful because I have a problem. And every single nature of the problem is nothing but a conflict. The nature of a conflict is battle, fight between my own thoughts, multiple thoughts. I got to go deep. That means you have to understand what is the nature of this thought. What is the nature of this thought? That's ultimate. Buddha speaks about this only. Thought. Understand your thought. From where this thought is coming, why this thought is coming. Is it possible to understand the thought? That means problem is nothing but a thought. We'll look into that. But are you able to see me? This is most essential, man. If you are able to see this one fact, I can immediately, right now, you become mukta, 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 mukta. You are totally liberated from all your problems. Provided you are able to see that every single problem is nothing but a thought. Actual liberation is very simple. Freedom is not from your wife, your son, your daughter, your profession, the society. Liberation is from your thoughts. Choice. Oh, okay. Choice is what? किसको प्यार करूं, कैसे प्यार करूं, ये भी है, वो भी है, वो भी है, कैसे प्यार करूं, किसको प्यार करूं, वो भी है, तू भी है. Of course, I don't have that problem because I have no choice. Okay. I know what I mean. Thank you so much. Great for tea and then come back. Thank you. Please ask, are you not neurotic? Are you not obsessive? Are you not mad? Why people go mad? Why people go mad? Multiple thoughts, multiple choices, unable to choose, unable to choose, confusion, doubt, no clarity. I'm scared to choose. But why do people go mad? They are not able to solve their problems. They struggle so much, but finally they may go mad. There is to be a man, remarkable gentleman, very genius, very kind man, brilliant man. He asked this question: what is the most common cause of madness in this world? What is the most common cause of madness in this world? What do you think?
Expectation.
Possible. But it was very practical man. You want to have a real evidence. Evidence. What is the most common cause of madness? Fortunately in his home, in his town, there is a big mental hospital. 1,000 mental patients. Pure pagal. Completely pagal. Totally pagal. So he thinks he will go to the hospital, he meet all the 1,000 pagals, find out why they went mad, what is the cause of their madness, so that then I will come to know what is the most common cause of madness. 1,000 patients. Good plan, no? He prepares a detailed visit protocol, goes to the hospital, meets the medical superintendent and takes his permission. Sir ji, मेरा ये problem है, मेरा ये program है, मेरा ये research protocol है. I want to meet all your patients. I would ask them what is the cause of their madness. Will you please permit me? Superintendent को बहुत अच्छा लगा. अरे यार, अरे बंदे, this excellent man. I also don't know. I also want to know what is the most common cause of. चलेंगे, दोनों साथ चलेंगे. So they prepared a nice, beautiful protocol and go to meet the pagals. Be very careful. You have to be very careful when you meet the pagals. वो कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. So what is the problem is they put one small cubicle inside is one pagal, one big block. Because they can be very dangerous to us. Okay. So they start the rounds. पहला कमरा. कमरे के अंदर कौन है? आपका नाम लिखता हूँ. कौन बैठे हैं? इस क्लास के सुपर अच्छे बंदे हैं, नेक बंदे हैं. भाई गौरव went mad. गौरव, भाई गौरव, क्या हुआ इनसे? क्यों ये पागल हो गए? सुपर से क्या कहें? दुख भरी कहानी, दर्द भरी कहानी. नेक बंदे, अच्छे बंदे, बट क्या कहें? एक लड़की से प्यार हो गया. एक लड़की से प्यार हो गया. लड़की बेवफा निकली. लड़की क्या निकली? बेवफा निकली. किसी दूसरे से शादी कर ली. उसके गम में गौरव पागल हो गया. So immediately notes down. Okay, what is notes down? Cause of madness is so next cabin. Next cab, who is sitting inside next cab? Okay. भाई मनोज बैठे हैं. बड़ी दाढ़ी, बड़ी This will ask people, मनोज भाई, अच्छे भाई, नेक बंदे, ये क्यों पागल हो गए? क्या करें? दर्द भरी कहानी, दुख भरी कहानी. ये बंदे पागल हो गए क्योंकि उस लड़की ने इनसे शादी कर ली। That is what. That is what. If you don't get a girl, you go. You go. And if you get a girl, if you have no qualification, you will go mad. If you have qualifications, you will go mad. If you have no job, you will go mad. And if you get a job in Manipal, it's Jaipur. If you don't become HOD, you'll go mad. If you become HOD, if you don't become president, you'll go mad. If you become president, if you have no wife, you'll go mad. If you have a wife, if you have no child, you'll go mad. If you have a child, that means whatever you do, you'll go mad. Whatever you don't do, still you'll go mad. I'm not joking. See. So मैं क्या करूँ? मैं जो भी करूँ, I go mad. मैं जो भी करूँ, तो I also go mad. This is a basic problem for all of us. Don't laugh. Please understand. Please observe. Please study. Please explore. Please inquire. This is the most basic problem. It is making us mad. I can't decide what should be the right action for these choices. So many choices. I can't decide. And every single choice is nothing but a thought. In 1993, when I first bought my car, you see, it was so easy. Maruti 800. I absolutely know the choice. No. How you go mad? When after you bought a car. No, I'm not joking, but please understand that. So choices won't give you freedom. The world cheats you that by making choices, they're giving you tremendous freedom. No. They're creating most difficulty, most problem, most madness. Because you are not able to see. When you have a clarity, when you have very clearly see what you are supposed to do, why there must be choice? I found you very clearly see this must be a right action, and you must do it. वो बेटी है उधर वो बोल रही थी. He is telling in the morning that she knows how to act. Absolutely no confusion. When you know very clearly see what you are supposed to do, you please do it. Choices comes only when you want to cheat the world. I mean, you have become very cunning. You have become very manipulative. You explain your inability by using choices. It's nothing but thoughts. No thought is required, and you must act. But only problem is you have become too cunning. You have become too clever. What is this thought? Are you following me? What is this thought? Very clearly see. We are approaching. I can't rest. I can't relax. I have no space because I have a problem. Every single problem is nothing but a conflict. Every single conflict is nothing but a battle between multiple thoughts. And what is thought? You have to go deep, so that you understand this thought. One thing you must very clearly see. Don't blame, don't curse anybody in this world. You must very clearly see how that thought is creating so much of unnecessary, stupid suffering. And good people should not suffer, man. And especially every single suffering, unnecessary, unwanted, non-essential, stupid suffering, which you must very clearly see. And this thought you must understand how this thought is creating so much of unnecessary, stupid suffering. I am going to show you. Will you please see? Next 15-20 minutes, you must use me as a mirror. You must use me as a most basic function of teacher is to you must function as a mirror. You are asking a very important question. How I can help my student? You must become a. What is the function of a mirror? To look at yourself. But the mirror must become. When I am able to look at myself, what is the most essential quality of a mirror? No judgment. Mirror will never judge. And it's silent. Absolutely no evaluations. Whoever comes in the front of the mirror, it's simply. So please use the mirror for next 15-20 minutes. I just want to show, please see how this thought is creating so much of havoc in your life. It is destroying your life. First property of the mind, and from where the thought comes, this mind, you see, the moment you are born, till you die, every single second the mind is active. Even the dreams indicate that mind is still active. You hardly have a deep sleep of 2 minutes when the mind is totally silent, and that is saving you. 2 minutes. Are you following me? Now, first function of the mind, which is a very important function, but this function can cause you so much of suffering. Association. What is association? Please see, you must see. What is association and how association can cause unnecessary, unwanted suffering. He was right. Every single problem is a stupid problem. He has not created a living problem. Are you following me? What is association? What is association? A very important function of the mind. Very important function. But this function can make you neurotic. It can cause you so much of unnecessary suffering. What is association? Association means what? Sense of belonging. Link.
Alliance.
Attachment. Connection. Excellent.
Alliance.
But I am using in a different context. I am going to show you. Will you please see? Please see. This kind of workshops we conduct in Manipal also. Just recently we conducted a workshop. The workshop went on so well. Everybody was so happy. They appreciated us so much. My God, Sudhakar, you are excellent man. You are a very good man. The workshop is fantastic, man. And when people praise you, because I am feeling so happy. Wow. I can see the joy. I can see the smile on the face of participants. Workshop is over. Saturday evening. Workshop is over. They are all gone back home. And I am feeling so good. I am feeling so happy. And when you are so happy, naturally I want to share my happiness with whom? Very simple. And have a wonderful, beautiful, young, not that young now. I work in Manipal and my home, beautiful, small, enormous home in Udupi, a small town about 5 kilometers from Manipal. So come out of my department, I am feeling so happy. And naturally I want to make my wife happy. And how to make my wife happy? You know everything about my wife. So I go to the market, I buy some nice, hot, soft, delicious gulab jamuns. Hot gulab jamuns. She's also very fond of flowers. So I go and buy some. 400 rupees, doesn't matter. Very baby, only baby, up boy. I buy the flowers, I buy the jamuns. I'm in excellent mood to make my wife happy. That day my car is gone for servicing. So that day I will travel from Manipal to Pune city bus. I won't mind, I'm in a great mood. I'm in a fantastic mood. Old man, I go and sit in the city bus. One hand jamun, one hand flower. I'm just imagining what will happen when I give the flower. What will happen when I give the jamun. I'm still in the bus slowly, starting towards Udupi. I'm in a great mood, remarkable mood, wonderful mood. Suddenly I look out of the window, and what I see? One black dog, काला कुत्ता, street dog. कहीं तो देखा है, that color, that mood, that bar, somewhere I've seen, very familiar. कहाँ देखा, किधर देखा है, कहाँ देखा है, कहीं तो देखा है, looks very familiar. अब याद आ गया. You know what? I used to be a very small boy. I used to stay in my village. In a small home, remarkable home, and next to my home, there's been a small home, and that small home, there's a small girl. What a beautiful, remarkable girl! And what was her name? Pramila. And that Pramila used to have a similar dog. What remarkable good day! You, Pramila, dog, the temple is very, Pramila. What a remarkable girl, my God, Pramila. You're still in the city bus. You're still in the city bus. Oh my God. Then what happened to Pramila? Oh, suddenly remember, you, Pramila, both went to Mysore Medical College. By that time, Pramila, you start wondering about all those beautiful days in Mysore, beautiful city, park, cafe, cinema, talking. My God, you what wonderful days. Pramila. You're still in the. But you know what? Only finger will go and failed in anatomy, failed in physiology, failed in biochemistry. Took 10 years to pass MBBS. Sudhakar like brilliant, excellent, gold medalist. I'm still in the
Same.
What happened to Pramila? You suddenly remember. She has passed her USMLE. She has become an interventional cardiologist. She is practicing in Boston. And you come to know that she has got 5 or 6 big, huge BMW cars, 5 or 6 big bungalows. Sudhakar Naik. Teacher. Manipal, India. This is not correct. This is not fair. This is full injustice. This is not fair. By the time we reach UDP, by the time we get out from the bus, somehow we get up, somehow we get down. The way you and just knock the door, the way you knock the door, and with that young, beautiful, not that young, beautiful wife, she comes and opens the door and she looks at you. She understands this, something is really wrong with this monkey. All this monkey, I go, I sit. Very carefully, she knows me. She has seen this monkey for several years. She comes and speaks carefully because she asks, Sudhakar, are you okay, man? क्या हुआ? ऐसा क्यों है? Shall I get you a cup of? Give me some poison. उसके बाद? Once finished. It's the beginning. He's a after my gulab jamuns. I'm dying, I'm suffering, I'm crying. He's after my gulab jamuns. Look at this word. My God. I don't have to explain after that. So much of pain, so much of shout, so much of flirt, so much of violence, so much of aggression. What's wrong with you, man? 10 minutes back or so, you brought jamuns, you brought flowers. How come in 10 minutes your whole world changed? Who is the boss? Who is the boss? Black dog. Black dog, Ramnarayan, Medical College, Boston, BMW. One thought associating with other thought. In 10 minutes your whole world changed. 10 minutes back you are living in heaven. In 10 minutes you create your hell. And what will happen to that jamun? What will happen? The most ultimate insult is that flowers, you see, which you brought with so much of love. Those flowers will become dry and you throw them in the dustbin. Ultimate insult. What's wrong with you, man? You're not a bad husband, not sure a bad wife, but in spite of that you create so much of problem, so much of suffering. Stupid suffering. This is what is called as stupid suffering. Absolutely, there was no necessity. That's a beautiful evening that will never going to come back that evening. In one stroke, you destroyed everything. Please look at yourself. Look at your moods. Sometimes when you get in the morning, you're so happy, you're so peaceful, you're singing, you're jumping, you're dancing. Next minute, you're deep down the valley. Cursing, blaming, fighting, insulting. Understand? Nobody, don't curse anybody, don't curse Pramila. Okay. Are you following? This is your thought. If you have some intelligence, if you have some awareness, the thought must end. The moment you see the black dog, you should not proceed further. If you proceed further, one thought, one idea, one concept, one memory, one song, one fragrance, you're simply sitting, you want to enjoy, you want to relax. Suddenly one thought emerges, and the chain of thoughts. Suddenly everything changed. Are you following me? Every single mood, you see everything, and sometimes you can be so moody. I can't even explain why you are so moody, especially women, pardon me. For men, the most difficult challenge is to understand that. I'm not joking. I'm not blaming, I'm not finding fault with your moods, you see.
No, it can be reverse also.
It can reverse also. But we live in moods, which cannot be explained. Afterwards, you will find it difficult. Why? Because your wife may ask of 3 weeks or 4 weeks and little what happened to you? Why that day you told that give me poison? How will you answer? Can you say Pramila? Oh my God! Oh my God! Look at this lady. This lady is a very dangerous lady. She says she will definitely give you. If you are my wife, I will definitely bring the poison. Are you following me? No way you can't explain. Impossible. But that mood is true. That change of mood is true. The thought is false. But that thought false is making you so much of destruction.
But this is a natural process, sir. This association is also a natural process.
Natural process. But association is very natural. You are very correct. When it becomes pathological, it's physiological actually. But it has become now pathological.
But sir, it is not necessary that association always gives the suffering. It may be the pleasant one also.
Very correct. That's what he's saying. It can be very physiological.
It may give some motivation also.
In science, you see, in science, every single discovery is because of association. One theory, one concept, one idea, one paper, association. That association is important. Okay? But not in your personal. Here, that distinction you must make. I'm not saying that you should destroy your thought. Thought is very essential. Without thought you can't function. Words are essential. Without word you can't function. But the same words create so much of problem. That is the awareness. That is intelligence. Yes.
The same thing is happening in dreams also.
Only problem is you are not able to, that acceptance and aversion is not there. Here you have the capacity to accept or to not accept. Rejection is there.
So suppose sometime you are in a bad mood.
Yeah.
Maybe that association takes to a good mood. Vice versa.
Difficult. Because please understand this. There is nothing like good or bad moods. It's all play of thoughts. Because most of us want to have that state of mind where you feel good and you start thinking good things. But it's not under your control. Several times it can suddenly shift into wrong moods, bad moods. And you're not even aware. That's the problem. You're not even aware. Are you aware about your moods? You're not aware. When everything is over, then it's too late. Are you following me? Next problem. Are you following me? I'll stop here, I'll come back again. But this, have you seen this fact? Thought is the cause of my ultimate suffering. Wrong thought in the sense, when thought becomes uncontrollable and you are not able to understand your thought, thought is essential, but you must have the awareness to use the right thought in the right way, the right people, right occasion. But you must also be aware when these kind of things happen. I'll request Professor Ramnarayan. He has a very important session he's doing about 3-in-1. Usually 3-in-1 is given after lunch, am I right? But he's going to give you before lunch. Is that all right? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So now,
3-in-1 is cassata ice cream. You have butterscotch. You have vanilla, chocolate. So 3-in-1, that's what Sudhakar said. 3-in-1 is given after lunch, but this time We are serving it before lunch because workshop is ending by lunch. Otherwise, we are giving it after lunch. Why is it called 3 in 1? This 3 in 1 are 3 concepts in education. As teachers, we must be aware of 3 things in education that will make us more effective. This entire workshop is about that effectiveness. So we will look at these 3 concepts. On the face of it might look something common, or you are familiar with this roles of a teacher, teaching portfolio, and diseases of the curriculum. Is that maybe that can be got into? Please, go on. Okay. There are 3 things that we must be aware of. You might, on the face of it, think this is something very simple, but I want to share with you some thoughts on these 3. These are short bullets. In a 3 in 1 ice cream, you have only small amount of vanilla, small amount of chocolate, small amount of butterscotch. So similarly, little bit only I will be giving, just to give you an introduction to these 3 concepts. Now when you look at the roles of a teacher, we are aware of this. It's not anything you did not know. I am only giving it a structure and some sort of a way of remembering. We are information providers. This role is going to become less. So this diagram, even though it is symmetrical, please note you may not play all the roles equally. I'm going to give you a handout that will be having this, so you don't have to right now. Then the other role that we play is resource, that we develop resources for student learning. You prepare an audio cassette, you may prepare a study guide, you might prepare some notes. Basically, we are allowing students to learn at their own pace. Then we are planners. Basically, we plan. When we plan, we hopefully will do better. Then we assess. We looked at assessment this morning. Then we are facilitators. At the end of it all, we are facilitators of learning. And the most important role, which I mentioned to you this morning, more things are caught than taught, I said. And that happens because when we are professional, people look up to us and they want to be like us. So that inspiring, influencing, all those things I mentioned about. In some way, these are hidden messages which are often picked up by students. They may not say so, but later in life they would like to emulate you the way you did things. Now I'm going to give you this handout, which is basically the 6 roles. You might wonder, why am I giving you this? There's a reason. Because when you get this, you're going to observe that these 6 have become 12 roles. Each of these roles have multiplied by 2. And you will see somewhere where you constantly reflect, somewhere where you work, wherever you have a study location, keep this as a reminder of the multiple roles we play. If you need to be a teacher, a complete teacher, a total teacher, then you will have to play all these roles. It's just a reminder, not that you didn't know all these things. I'm only giving it a structure. Any more? So you have multiple roles to play. These 12 roles, even teacherhood means playing all these roles, these 12 roles. If you, in some way or the other, contribute, it's just an awareness. Somewhere, keep this on the wall, keep it on the table, wherever you have as your workstation, keep this as a reminder that if I need to be a complete teacher, a total teacher, I need to play all these roles. Though not equally, it depends on your interest, your abilities, and what your responsibilities are. But more or less, to be a complete teacher, it means. But this is a very, very practical thing. You didn't have anything new in this. But I'm now going to take you to a different dimension. This is very down to earth, the 12 roles of a teacher. Now I'm going to ask you, who is the teacher? And I'm going to answer this in a totally different dimension. a dimension that all of us must be aware, at least it will make us ponder, make us wonder, make us look at being a teacher in a different way. We'll read this together. Good. We'll read this together. A teacher. Who is a teacher? Now I'm looking at it in a different dimension. A teacher needs to open the mind, touch the heart, and hold the hand of the student. To accomplish this, the teacher has to play several roles: the historian, the sleuth, the visionary, the symbol, the potter, the poet, the actor, and the leader. The teacher as a historian blends the past with the present and propels the student into the future. The teacher as a sleuth is a detective who probes values and beliefs and personifies the philosophy of teaching. The teacher as a visionary has the foresight to paint a great future in the heart of the student. The teacher as a symbol affirms values through his demeanor and attitude. The teacher as a potter is a sculptor who uses gentleness and kindness to chip through the barriers and reveal the magnificent soul within a student. The teacher as a poet uses language to shape, sustain, and refurbish the joy of learning. The teacher as an actor improvises and improves the culture of the organization. The teacher as a healer softens the trials and tribulations and oversees transitions and change. For playing these multiple roles, the teacher has to be an artist, a craftsman, and a scientist. For this, the incarnation of a teacher must unfold as an astute artist, a canny craftsman, and a sublime scientist. This is another way of looking at teacherhood. That's the other dimension. And yet there is yet another dimension, and that is the dimension it is conveyed through a poem, a favorite poem of mine, The Builder. A builder built a temple, he wrought it with grace and skill, pillars and grains and arches, all fashioned to work his will. Men said as they saw its beauty, it shall never know decay. Great is thy skill, O builder, thy fame shall endure of age. A teacher builded the temple with loving and infinite care, planning each arch with patience, laying each stone with prayer. None saw his unceasing effort, none knew of his wondrous plan, for the temple the teacher builded was unseen by the eyes of man. God is the builder's temple, crumpled into the dust, low lies each stately pillar, food for consuming rust. But the temple the teacher builded will last while the ages roll, for that beautiful unseen temple was a child's immortal soul. This really is what we are. We are builders. We build so many lives, we can touch so many lives. Is it possible for us to be aware of this role that we play? Unknowingly and knowingly, we can touch so many lives, and we are builders. Butterscotch over. Next is what is called teaching portfolio. The second component in the 3-in-1 is teaching portfolio. I'm going to give you a handout for this, but before I go to this, let me ask you, how do you quantify research? We are not doing it. How do you say somebody is a great researcher, a good researcher? What are the parameters on the basis of which you say somebody is a good researcher?
One is publications.
Publications, citations.
If his research has contributed to upliftment
It
of the
has,
society.
yes, correct. See, just now at the conference, they gave the best researcher award, the best chemistry researcher award they have given. And based on citations, how many PIs, how many times you are a PI, so many things. Citations, number of times the citations, all those. You have parameters to quantify research. Now tell me, how do you quantify teaching? Tell me the parameters on the basis of which you say, I am an effective teacher. You go for an interview, somebody asks you, tell me about your teaching. You can only say, I have 7 years, 10 years, 15 years. Tell me, how do you know you're a good teacher or an effective teacher? That is where the challenge came. Many universities abroad particularly almost 30 years ago in Australia, people realized that when it came for interviews and promotions, they only asked, show me your papers, show me your publications. But you say, 70% of my time I am teaching, and no value for teaching. Teaching is only lip service when it comes to counting. What counts is research and grants and patents. That is when the conflict came. People felt, what is the use of teaching? Who cares about teaching? No one cares. When I go for a promotion interview, I am asked about my publications. That's when they said, we must have a mechanism by which we document teaching. And that is teaching portfolio. In NUJ, we will be having a system where you can document your teachings. Teaching will count. If you are spending even 40% of your time, 50% of it, in fact most of you spend even 50 or 60% of your time teaching, or even more sometimes. If you are spending 50% of your time teaching, let 50% of your credit be given to teaching. That has to count. You can't say that teaching you do, but that won't count. It is not going to make sense. So that is why they came out with something quantifiable parameters by which you can quantify teaching. People don't know about this. Many of you are very young. You are going to apply for positions in universities abroad. Invariably, every application form today, be it from Australia, be it from UK, be it from Canada, be it from US, wherever it is, invariably there will be one column. If it's a university teaching position, they will ask you to present your teaching portfolio. And a teaching portfolio is basically a documentation of your teaching. How do you, because we don't know how to do it. You suddenly are stunned by that. You have heard of a research portfolio, you have heard of a student portfolio. A teaching portfolio is a record compiled by an academic staff member. Certain things you do. What do? You document your accomplishments, your strengths and your responsibilities in a particular way. I'm going to give you a very fine handout, a green guide as it is called, on teaching portfolio. One of the finest. There are many articles on teaching portfolio, but the one which I am giving you is one of the finest, simplest, and it's easy for you to compile. Please maintain this, because we have everything to document research. We have everything to document our consultancy. See, we have three roles that we play: teaching, consultancy, and research. We know how to document research, publications, patents, whatever. Consultancy or community service, whatever you call it, that's the second role we play. Our contribution to society, in whatever way, we are expected to do that, because each one of us must contribute in some way to society. Whatever you do, what is your contribution to society, community service, in whatever way you're interested. The third one is teaching. Teaching, we are not able to document. And somebody asks you, how do you know you're an effective teacher? You have no answer. And that is why this teaching portfolio has come in. It is an in thing today in almost every university. Today when you function as an academic, be aware what is teaching portfolio. Why do you compile it? Because it helps you to document. ISO says, do what you document what you do. This is what you do with reference to teaching. It is all about evidence. Today they say, give me evidence that you are an effective teacher. A teaching portfolio helps you to have that evidence. It is systematic and comprehensive, and most of all, there is a format. And that format is what I am going to give you a handout which actually tells you why, how you can compile a teaching. It's very simple, it's not at all complicated. We sometimes don't know how to do it. So that how is what is explained in the handout. A teaching portfolio is needed because it helps you to reflect. Reflect in the sense you think about what you are doing. Sunil Gavaskar, again I go back to him. He was once asked, which was your best innings? He scored well in the first innings. Those days only test cricket was there. He was asked, which was your best innings? Your first innings, your second innings? He said, my third innings. The reporter was a bit taken aback. Third innings? There is no third innings in test cricket. He said, before I go to bat, I play my first innings in my mind. What I must do, how I will bat. Second innings is the actual innings I play. But the most important innings is my third innings. My third innings of reflection. My third innings of introspection. My third innings, my inward journey. I see what I can do better. I could have done better so that I become better the next time. Reflection on teaching. We don't have time. Because the moment you finish teaching, you go to another class. You finish that teaching, you go to another class, and then you have to do some research. there is no time to think about teaching. Ideally, if you are a teacher, you need double the time minimum to prepare, and you need some time to reflect. We don't factor this in when you look at teaching responsibilities. When you look at your teaching responsibilities, you must factor in the preparation time, you must factor in the assessment time. Otherwise, you can never be complete as a teacher. And that is what you have to remember always. And that is possible if you have a teaching portfolio. So it helps you to reflect. Reflection is basically helping you to look at teaching. What is it that you have been doing? Are you doing the same thing that you did in the first year of teaching? After 25 years, are you doing it the same way? Next one is improve. It helps you to improve. When you start reflecting, you naturally improve. Unknowingly, you might improve. And then, of course, when the time comes, when you go for an interview, somebody asks you, how do you know you're a good teacher? This is my teaching portfolio. Show it. Please show it to me. This is my documentation of teaching. And this is to be used, it is recommended. If some of us, not everybody can be researchers. Some of us can be, to some extent, research. Some of us can be very good teachers. Some of us can be great researchers. So you have a system. Eventually, what we hope to have is a 3-track system. A track which will enable you to spend most of your time, if your interest is teaching, spend 70% of your time teaching. You can do a little bit of research, a little bit of consultancy. If you are wanting to do mostly research, spend 60% of your time research. Do a little bit of teaching and a little bit of consultancy. That can be given maybe 5 years through your teaching career. But it's very important to have credit given to teaching, which we have not done. And that is where universities have failed. And they see the mismatch. Faculty see the mismatch. When it comes to promotion, when it comes to extension of tenure, what counts is only that's wrong. You have to give credit. And not only that, you can publish papers in education. When you have so many students, you can make papers in education. Learning methods, there are many methods. Every subject of yours has an education journal. And you can publish, that is also research. So you don't have to think that research has to be such hardcore that it is something separate from what you are doing. That is why it is important to be aware of what is the teaching portfolio. I'll give you this handout, which I think you should be able to. It's a very simple handout. Keep it with you because you never know when you're going to apply for positions abroad. You might be applying for teaching positions, fellowships, scholarships, anything which will require you to do some teaching. And invariably they will ask you for a teaching portfolio. It's a very simple one, but more important, keep it with you when the time comes. Even today you can start compiling your teaching portfolio. It helps you to talk about teaching, project your teaching responsibilities, which we are not knowing how to do. Having said that, I now ask you a question. What is teaching? Which is the question which you are seeing? I have been, in fact, this entire workshop is about teaching and pedagogy. So, this is the handout that addresses the issue. What is teaching? September 5th, every year we celebrate Teachers' Day. You are aware of that? Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, President of India, his birthday. A few years ago, on September 5th, in Manipal University, in Manipal, we had Teachers' Day. And I thought, instead of doing the usual speech, I will talk to them on what is teaching. So this is what I shared with the faculty on Teachers' Day a few years ago. I will read this with you. What is teaching? Teaching is more about the humanity inside the teacher rather than the technology outside the teacher. Teaching is more about a role we celebrate than a chore we tolerate. Teaching is more about outcome rather than income. Teaching is more about an affair of the heart than a matter of the head. Teaching is about identity, intensity, integrity, and individuality of the teacher. Teaching is about commitment and connections. commitment to the cause, connections with our students. Teaching is about living and living the role, loving our job. Teaching is about learning and learning to improve, yearning to excel. Teaching is about passion and precision, passion to convince, precision to convey. Teaching is about rigor and elegance, rigor of preparation, elegance of performance. Teaching is about blooming and blossoming, blooming of the teacher, blossoming of the students. Teaching is about pondering and peering, pondering the past for reflection, peering into the future for projection. Teaching is less about preaching and more about reaching and touching, reaching out to our students and touching their lives. Individually we enjoy teaching, collectively we celebrate teaching. Let us celebrate teaching as a vocation. Let us celebrate teaching as a commitment. Let us celebrate teaching as a profession. Let us celebrate teaching as an obsession.
Beautiful.
This is what teaching is. Butterscotch over, chocolate over. Last one, vanilla. And that is diseases in the curriculum. This is very interesting. All of us are involved in curriculum development, curriculum workshop, curriculum. Every day we talk about curriculum. What it is to have a healthy curriculum? Most of us want to have a wholesome, healthy, good, sustainable curriculum. The wind, I mentioned curriculum is like the wind. The wind must be a breeze and you must be able to enjoy that breeze. It cannot be a cyclone. It cannot be so violent that it can destroy you. Sometimes a curriculum can be problematic. For that you must know what are the diseases of a curriculum. Because if you know the diseases, you will prevent the diseases, you will cure the diseases. So let us see what are the common diseases. I'm just sharing this with you, just for you to be aware, what are the common diseases all of us have experienced it. The first one I call curriculosclerosis. It is also called as departmentalization, kingdom building. The department becomes very powerful. Big man, big ego, big department. Departments become very powerful. Now, nothing against departments. Departments are necessary for growth. But if the department becomes bigger, than the curriculum, then there are challenges. And what is that challenge? There will be one department that is very powerful. There will be another department which is equally powerful. Then relationship between two departments become painful. That is, arthritis means joint pain. Curriculo-arthritis. Relationship between two departments become painful. We call this as affecting articulations between segments. Where there is two departments, they don't even look at each other. Then you have problem, ego problem. I still remember I once went as an examiner to a university. In the morning, as I was going to the examination hall, it was a practical examination. The internal examiner, who was from there, told me, we will not walk through this corridor because this corridor belongs to microbiology department. We don't want to see their face. We'll go up the staircase, then we'll go there, then we'll come down and go there. That is the situation where they don't even want to look at each other. And we tell students, you must integrate these two subjects. They are seeing the conflict. They are seeing these people fighting and they don't want to look at each other, and we tell students must disintegrate, integrate, we will remain disintegrated. That is where the conflict comes. This is the second one. We have all experienced it. Let us be aware. The fact that we are aware of it, at least we will make sure that we will not allow this to happen. At least we must be aware of this. This is curriculo-arthritis. Arthritis means joint pain. The relationship between two departments becomes painful. Third one is curriculum hypertrophy, means overgrowth. It is sometimes called as knowledge explosion, sometimes known as megali. Megali means overgrowth. Books become bigger and bigger and bigger. And we tell students, you must read this book. This is the big book you have to read. In my own subject in pathology, there is a book called Robbins Pathology. It was a fairly readable book, not too many pages when first edition came. Then that book became bigger. The author felt it is too big for the undergraduate student. He produced Baby Robbins. The baby came out. The baby, babies grow. Baby also started growing. This baby became bigger. Baby also became so big, the author felt, oh, this is also too big. He brought out one Fetal Robbins, small pocket edition, which students can carry. Now the big edition, the big Robbins, for some reason is called Father Robbins. I often argue with the bookseller and say, this is not father, it has to be mother. This is the first instance where father has given birth to baby and baby has given birth to fetus. But that bookseller says there is no such thing as Mother Robbins. It is always Father Robbins. If you want to take this book, otherwise don't come and argue with me. This is the issue. This is problem. For some reason, and what do? We tell our students, when he comes, we tell, you must read Father Robbins. Huge, monumental book. And that book, which will scare anybody. And I tell my students, you can rest assured you will never fall asleep. Because if you hold that book and read, it will fall on your face. And after that, you will not sleep for the rest of the night because there will be some facial injuries. So, the issue is this. When a student comes and you tell them that you have to read such a big book, there is no way. The student will not read anything. And you say you must read cover to cover. What you can read cover to cover other than storybooks? It is impossible. Please tell them what they have to read. What I am saying is have some concern for your students. They have several other subjects to do, so many other things to do. Please tell them what they have to study. Whichever, even if you are prescribing a big book, please say this chapter, this page, these areas you must concentrate on. That is the least we can do out of concern and some compassion for your students. And that is curriculum hypertrophy. Next was cancer of the curriculum. One segment starts growing. All of us have experienced it. One part of the curriculum starts growing, develop. It is necessary, subspecialization, super specialization. Every subject has got subspecial, which has happened, things which did not exist before. And what we do, we go on adding everything in the curriculum. This is called carcinoma of the curriculum. That is, you go on adding more and more, you don't delete. Who must delete? Other subject. They must delete. I will not delete. Deletion, why they are teaching so much in that subject? In my subject I will add, deletion must be in the other subject. So deletion, somebody else, addition. And we forget that there is something called delete button. When we add something, let us also delete. Double the amount if you can, but we can't do that. We often say deletion must be somebody else. That is, be aware, this is something, you can't expect them to remember unlimited amount of information. They are not expected to be storehouses of information. I had a classmate of mine who was going for an exam. Somebody asked him, do you know this? It will come in the exam. He said, now don't tell me one more thing. If you tell me one more thing, I'll forget my father's name. Because he says he's full. And anything has to go in, something has to go out. He says his father's name will be forgotten. This is the situation in which our students go for exam. They have everything like this. And then the moment something is put inside, something will go out. This is what I mean by saying have some consideration, cancer of the curriculum. The last one I call iatrogenic means caused by frequent interruptions. You attend a workshop, pedagogic and personal effectiveness workshop. So you go back to your department and then you say, tomorrow we will do this. Your head of the department will say, never again go for any workshop. Let anybody conduct the workshop. You are not going. You sit here and do what I say. Don't go for any workshop because you are a cause of problem. You come and create all sorts of problems. This is what happens. Very often we attend a workshop. We are not sure. You have heard something about it and in the process you think it is good. It may be effective but other people are not involved. So when you start going and attempting something, somebody will say something has gone wrong with this person. Either as a result of attending the workshop, best is not to allow anybody to go for workshop. So this is what you have to be aware. Please remember, nothing wrong with change. But when you want to bring about change, take everybody into confidence. Everybody must be involved. Otherwise what will happen? You will try to tamper and there will be chaos and confusion. The last disease of the curriculum is what I call curriculum ossification, fossilization. You get complacent. You say, we have always done it this way, why should we change? When you want to buy a television, you want the latest television. When you want a mobile phone, you want the latest mobile phone. When you want to buy a car, you want the latest car. But when you want to teach, you will do what Jambawan did, what Tipu Sultan did. During those days, you want to be in those ages. You don't want to change anything. Because you say, have you not become good professionals? Have you not become good engineers? Have you not become good architects? So we want to remain complacent. We say that old is gold and we don't want to change. I'm not saying everything happening today is for the better, but there are some good things today. We can blend the present with the past and give the best of this to our students. You don't have to condemn both. You don't have to condemn the present, you don't have to condemn the past. You can always take a blend. And that is what we call as curriculum ossification. So the diseases of the curriculum, one is curricular sclerosis. Powerful departments can be a problem, and that problem can be form of interpersonal relationship. We have looked at that, the interpersonal friction and interdepartmental friction. Explosion of knowledge. Be aware students don't have unlimited ability to remember things. Because one segment, sub-specialization, wonderful, necessary for the growth of the subject. But please keep in mind, students, when they are given something additional, make sure that something is deleted from the subject. What is obsolete, what is not necessary, please remove. Iatrogenic curriculitis is frequent, too frequent tampering. Every day you change the curriculum. And people get confused. Everybody is confused. And they wonder, what is all this? Nothing will come out of this. Last one is curriculum ossification, fossilization. Let us not become too complacent. So that is when the three things are over. So we have seen the three in one, the three things in one. But please remember this workshop, which we have titled Pedagogic and Personal Effectiveness Workshop. If you see this workshop, it has got a very interesting title. It is called Pedagogic and Personal Effectiveness. Pedagogy is what you are saying to children when they learn, when they are in school. What happens is pedagogy. Pedagogy is what? Pedagogy is what happens in school, where what is to be learned is decided by the teacher. How it is learned is decided by the teacher. In school, this is what happens. The teacher decides what the student has to learn. The teacher also decides how the student learns. Then they come to college. That's what happens in higher education. Andragogy. Andragogy is teacher decides. Teacher in the sense the curriculum, the department, the university, more or less you decide what is to be taught. We have not much scope for variation. Decided by the teacher and used in the context of university or department. How the student learns, we give them options, opportunities, avenues. So that is where adult learning comes. The student decides how to study. You say these are the things you have to know. You may read it from these sources. You give them different options. This is adult learning, andragogy. This workshop could have been called, actually should have been called andragogic and personal effectiveness. But unfortunately, we had used the word andragogy because of its close association with androgens. That is the male sex hormone. People would have got some confusion. What are you going to do in this workshop? Are you going to do some performance enhancement activities? So you may be a little suspicious. So we thought we will not confuse you upfront. We will only tell you about this term. Actually, what we did, most of the activities were learning experiences for you. We didn't lecture, except maybe my first session on lecture. Most of them were activities where you were involved and then there was a learning and a message. So it is adult learning, which is what we should offer to our students. And that is andragogy. But please remember, today's students are very, very different. They will tell you, you don't tell me what to study. You don't tell me how to study. I know everything. Our students are like that. That is, the student wants to decide what to study. The student wants to decide how to study. This is today's world. Your children will be telling you that. Your children will be telling you that. You don't tell me anything. I know what to study. I know how to study. This means what? We have no role, no teacher. But this is what we call as pedagogy. It's there, you can Google this. Pedagogy is self-determined learning. Self-determined. You have heard of problem-based learning. You have heard of case-based learning. What happens in that? You give a case, you give a problem, you give a scenario. based on the scenario, to solve the problem, to proceed with this case, I need to know something. You decide what to study. Based on you encounter the problem first. Based on that, the student decides, okay, now to solve this problem, I need to know this. You decide what. He sees the relevance immediately. Then he goes about and decides how to study. That means you are only a provider of opportunities. And that is why today, most regulatory bodies emphasize on case-based learning, problem-based learning, because they believe there is involvement, and that is pedagogy. Pedagogy is basically, you determine what you want to learn, you also determine how you want to learn. And that is best remembered if you keep in mind the need of the student. That is, the student decides, and there's no point, we need not get upset. Today's students are like that. And I'm going to share with you an article which I have published along with a few of my colleagues on pedagogy, just for you to be aware what it is that we are having when we deal with millennial learners. This is an article where we have used the social media, that is Facebook, for pedagogy. You can read this at your convenience. It was published just 2 months ago, just for you to be aware what is pedagogy. It introduces that term, and it also introduces you to how we can use. We must be at the same platform at which our students are, and how this can be utilized. So be aware of pedagogy. Yes. To some extent, yes, correct. In case-based learning, we have the objectives, but we want those objectives to come from the student. We have certain things in mind. I want the student to learn these things from this case, but we don't tell that to the student. I want the student to read, struggle through, get involved, and then decide. If they deviate, then we will take them. This just introduces you, this particular article introduces you to one more. This tells you about today's learners, and tells you about the need of us to be aware. If we are not going, you can't say that I am in Jambawan stand. Today your students are on Facebook, Twitter, name it. Everything is there. Can you also be at that level? Not easy, but be aware. So you can read this article at your convenience. So that is what I wanted to share with you. You have been a wonderful, wonderful group, one of the finest groups. It has been my pleasure to interact with you. I do hope I will be meeting many of you over and over again. I promise you that I will meet you again. I will be here. This workshop gave me a great opportunity to meet with so many of you. And I will be here till the end of the workshop. Don't go. I'm not going anywhere. But most important, it was wonderful. You have been most enthusiastic. Please be as zestful, as enthusiastic, and as spirited as you are. Keep asking questions, keep discussing, keep debating, and keep talking. And that's the only way we can learn. And I'm happy that so many of you who have been so active. It has been such a pleasure knowing you, and I hope to be knowing you even more as we go along in the months to come. Thank you. Last concluding session, Principal. Those of you who want the presentation, it is here. You can take it. It is on this laptop.
Thanks so much. Last session, the final session. But please see, please observe how I thought, the way I think, how this world, how this imagination, how this association, how this recurrence, how this anger, how this hurt, how this pain, how this expectation, how this desire can cause so much of problem, so much of difficulty. Please see, I already tried to show you one thing, association. Good people, remarkably good people, but my every single suffering, every single sorrow, every single misery, every single problem is a stupid suffering. Unnecessary, unwanted, unwarranted suffering. Please see this. Please see this. There's absolutely no reason for you to suffer. Please. The second is a very important function of the mind, which can create so much of problem, so much of difficulty, so much of imagination. First is what? First is association. The second again very important property is imagination. Again, please understand, imagination is a very powerful part of the mind. She is right. He said association can be used very positively. Imagination also can be used very positively. Every single thing what you have done in our history, in civilization, is because we are able to. Every single creation, whatever we have invented, is because of the powerful capacity of the mind to imagine. But the same imagination, unfortunately, causes so much of unnecessary stupid suffering. Here I am going to do a lot of overacting, please pardon me. But please see, in 1978, many of you are not even born. I went to Manipal. I had all the qualifications, all the degrees. I was brilliant. I was super. I was very good. I decided to live in any part of the world, but I decided to work for Manipal. 40 years of my important life, 40 last years, so devotedly I have committed for Manipal. I have no regrets. They have taken care of me, they have respected me, they have valued me, they have given me everything. I am so grateful for Manipal. Today I am the head of the Department of Biochemistry in Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, one of the top ranked medical schools in India. I am very proud about my position. I am a good man. I am so happy that they recognized me and they respected me. They have done everything for me. One fine morning, I get up in the morning, I am in excellent mood. I बहुत खुश, इतना खुश, बहुत खुश. I have a cup of tea. I say goodbye to my wife. I drive my car. I go to my department. They have given me a beautiful cabin, remarkable cabin, excellent cabin, a royal cabin. I go to my cabin, 9 o'clock in the morning. I am in excellent mood. I am sitting in the cabin, looking at my diary, what class, what meeting, where to go, what to do. I am in excellent mood. I am singing to myself. Suddenly the door, my cabin door opens, and who comes? Who comes? Principal. Of course, he can't come to my cabin, man. I have to go to his cabin. What? Have you ever seen a principal coming to your cabin? You have to go and beg. No, he can't come. But who comes? Attendant of the day. You don't have a principal, you have a dean. You know him? How do we know him? Or she? He? Oh, no. He? Terrible. The Malayalam. Terrible fellow. I don't know who made him the dean. Anyhow, they should have actually made me the dean, but anyhow, no. Who comes? Attendant of the dean comes. And the way he comes, he thinks he's the dean. Sala. And the way he comes, his arrogance. The way he talks to, I'm HOD here, the way he talks to me, as if I'm his attendant. And he says, Dean Sahib bola rahe, Dean Sahib, तेरे को क्या साहब, मलयाली साहब. Dean Sahib bola rahe hain, और अभी आना. And he goes. Why is Malayali is calling? That early morning, why is calling? Such a beautiful day. Now I have to go and see this Malayali face. But why is calling? But when he is calling, he can better. But Dean is calling, I have to go. No. But why is calling? Nothing is pending. He doesn't usually call me. But why is calling? Before I have to go, his office is very close to my cabin, it's about 5 minutes walk. But before I go and meet him, I must understand. At least I must know why he is. But so that I can prepare myself, use that Malayali. Slowly, better for my seat. ये Malayali है, सब बर्बाद कर दिया. This beautiful day is. Now I have to go and see his face. Why is calling me? I slowly walked towards this cabin. But why is calling me? Oh, you know what? Now I know. You know what? Yesterday afternoon, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law both came to the campus. Important people. Our office hours are from 9 to, what about your office hours? 9 to 5. Yesterday came at 3 o'clock, and yesterday when they came, I had to go, no? I had to go a little early, at 3:30. When I was reversing my car, he seen me. Why are you laughing, man? Explosive For that, you don't. This is most essential. More creative, more, and that silence is only eternal.